It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott's here. Richard Campbell's here. You know where they're not? Microsoft Ignite. We get the explanations and what's going on at Ignite. It looks like AI is a big push. What a surprise. They call it Agentic AI. We'll also talk about a big Xbox segment coming up. Some great new games coming to Xbox Game Pass and a couple of really old games coming back from the dead. It's all next on Windows Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell, episode 908, recorded November 20th, 2024, 26 boxes of Napoli. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show we talk about everything Microsoft. And the entire crew is back, and it couldn't make me happier.
Oh, hello.
Hello, Richard Campbell. We missed you. Richard was gone for a couple of weeks.
Who is this third man?
Yeah.
First in Tunisia, where there was no internet, and then you fell ill in Lithuania.
Yes.
I was getting nervous.
You would not have wanted that show. It was grim.
Yeah, I bet. Anyway, we're glad you're feeling better.
Yeah.
And you're back in Madeira Park, BC.
Yep, in the storm.
Just in time for the bomb cyclone.
Yep.
Which, it's interesting. Even though we are miles apart, we are sharing the same storm.
Yes. I'm on the top edge of it, and you're on the bottom edge of it. So there you go.
And poor Olympia, Washington is right smack dab in the belly button.
Taking it hard.
Oof. Well, anyway, welcome back, Richard. We literally did miss you. It was.
I miss you guys too.
Yeah.
It was really weird to not have that midweek conversation.
I love it. Yeah. I was telling Richard before the show began that basically my friends are the show, other people I do the shows with. That's who I talk to you guys like 6 hours a day, and that's enough.
Yeah.
Who's got time for friends after that?
I don't need no one else.
Right.
And actually, to be honest, I should include like the club members in the chat room and all that, because those are, even though in fact somebody in there, Paul Holder said, well, I consider you a friend, even though, you probably don't. And I said, Paul, we've never met, but you are absolutely my friend, because he and I are coding buddies. He's like a really hotshot coder. And so I ask him all my coding questions. We were talking about that the other day, where it's still probably the case that if you want, if you're looking for a gray beard in, PHP,
Right.
it's not going to probably be in your community.
Right.
Yeah, not these days.
It's going to be online. Paul Thurrott is my gray beard when it comes to Delphi.
I think it was Mark Rosanovich or maybe Scott Hanselman said recently that they had talked to some expert in some coding, like Python or something, and they said, "Well, you're an expert in whatever this language is," and he said, "I used to be."
Yeah.
And that's the thing, life goes on. So,
Languages change too.
I used to dream in VCL, but that's
You
that was
got
a
over
long
that.
time ago.
They call them Pythonistas.
Yeah.
I was
too
a Pythonista when it was 2.0, so I'm way out of the loop now.
As long as I got my Copilot with me, I can spew out some Python that might actually
Nowadays,
execute.
Copilot really is good at Python.
Yeah.
Paul Thurrott is at thurrott.com. Richard's at runisradio.com. And of course, there's somewhere they're not right now, which is Ignite. What the hell?
Actually, before we get to that, Richard missed 2 episodes. So what I'd like to do is go through.
Oh, let's go through them all. Yeah.
All of the notes and just make sure.
Okay.
That we
Up
know
to
where he's
speed.
at on, because I feel like there were a couple of things in there, especially. Actually, we may reference a few things you missed, Richard.
Sure.
He is
and
keeping up.
I make .NET Rocks episodes on the .NET Conf stuff.
Yeah.
I had some announcement stuff in the can, so I'm pretty up to speed.
Yep. Oh no, I'm not. I was more interested in. There were specific parts of each of the past 2 episodes where I was like, man, I really want to talk to Richard about this.
Yeah.
The .NET 9, right?
Not this guy,
But
no, no, because Richard specifically, I just, with your background and everything, I was super interested.
Well, we should loop back on a couple of those things.
Well,
sure.
and then I had a whiskey pick the first week, which was a whiskey movie. A movie about whiskey, and then called Whiskey Galore. And then Paul had a lovely cocktail from Mexico City, the Salmoncito.
which we learned was invented by a guy we know there, and he totally underplayed that when he described it to us. We took it as kind of a joke, and then my wife found out researching it that he actually invented the cocktail, which is pretty cool. Like it's kind of a neat thing. So.
And then, Richard, don't worry. We plugged .NET Rocks every week. We did make sure your latest episode was featured. So
thank you.
Yeah. No, and I listened to the episode where you were talking about Windows on ARM and it becoming a first-class citizen, et cetera, et cetera. And
Aria Hansen.
I was telling Leo, and I just had this experience. We were flying home, and I was rereading Steven Sinofsky's book, and he talks about me in the book, like he references me in the book a few times, right? So you get that weird experience. You're like, huh? So I'm listening to the episode about Windows and ARM, and you said something about me and how excited I was every time I opened the lid of my laptop and it just came on. And I said to Leo, I said, sometimes it's really weird being me, or really interesting being me,
sometimes,
because I listen to this not because of, because I want to, like I'm interested in it. Like it's not completely coincidental that I know you, but it is, it's an interesting, you've been doing this thing for a long time. So now you're a co-host here on the show, and that's awesome. I get to see you every week, but like, I would have listened to this regardless, like it was just, it was
sometimes my stories involve you these days.
Yeah.
Look, I
for
understand,
better or worse, so.
I understand listening to Richard's show, but why are you rereading Steven Sinofsky's book? It seems like once through would have been enough.
Yeah, so I have actually reread parts of it possibly a dozen times by this point.
The part where your name is brought up?
No. And I no, part of it is just therapy. I'm trying to get over that part of my life, but also, no, given the way Windows has gone, it might have been a couple of weeks ago. I don't remember. I'd written this story about reliability in Windows, and actually it will come up today. Actually, we're going to talk about resiliency today, for example, but when you look at the state of Windows today, it hasn't gone great. And
it's been rough.
At the time, very critical of Windows 8 and all the stuff they were doing and everything. And I go back and reread, the rationale. And I think to myself, actually, there was some adult supervision there that we don't have today. And anyway, yeah.
I just think Windows is in a weird place because it's not the center of the company anymore. Right?
Yep. And that's a big part of it. Yeah, for sure.
It's a different, you've got the old timers who don't want to move and the new folks who drew a short straw.
You're not attracting talent there because the people who are aggressively looking to get ahead at Microsoft are going after those parts of the company that are top of mind, like cloud and AI and all that. So
totally.
You get the, whatever that stuff is at the bottom of the coffee filter, that's the Windows team today.
I think, it was Osterman who left the Windows team, went to Azure, and I asked him about that. And he said, there's a couple of thousand 30 plus year folks still working in the Windows team. And they're very hard to deal with because this is his quote. He says, unless they have 8 wives and a cocaine habit, they don't need the money. So how do you motivate people?
I made the case I think it was yesterday actually, that there's also 2 parts to this, to the team, the Windows team. Like, there's not really a Windows team, but what the groups that contribute to Windows, the groups that make Windows what it is, there's that back end stuff. This has been true for a long time, right? And so Jim Alchin days, that was like the server group. These days it's the Azure group. Those are the adults. These are the David Westons, the people who do the security stuff, the people who do the foundational work, et cetera. And then you get this kind of clown car doofuses that are throwing out new features all over the place, and they're not testing them, and they're causing reliability problems. And so, our relationship with the Windows can vary widely depending on what part of the company we're talking about. There's very deep, fundamentally strong security work being done in Windows through things like Windows Hello, ESS, et cetera. That is impressive. Yeah. And then there are stupid icons on taskbars and doofus, UIs that I don't even know what they're doing anymore.
Boxes and all of that.
Yep. So it's like a person with split personality. It's like watching a loved one fall to dementia, but you have to keep dealing with them. And sometimes there's a little burst of something that sounds correct, and most of the time it's they're calling you by the dog's name or something. So it's a weird relationship. But But yeah, that's anyway. This week on Paul's Therapy, we're going to look at.
You have to say you're making friends on the Windows team. Right there,
I don't. Who cares? Do you think I care about those people at all? They don't care about me, and they don't care about people using Windows. So what's the difference? This is a different world. I could not care less about those idiots.
Why aren't you at Ignite? I know why I'm not at Ignite, but why aren't you at Ignite?
Because I could be in Mexico for one more week, and no, the big reason was they did not invite they didn't invite the press until very late in the game.
Okay,
and making it very expensive. And as the kind of calendar clicked by, I was like, yeah, I know. So I talked to my wife about it. I said maybe this just doesn't make sense. And then they sent out a little feeler email and said, hey, we're trying to figure out like who wants to go and everything, you know? And so I was like, yeah, maybe. And then they invited me and I'm like, yeah, I'm not going. It's just too late. You know, you should have done this in September. I would have booked this. Yeah. I would have booked this a long time ago, like I did back in the day. It just gets really expensive. You know, I went to build, but they did the same thing. And it wasn't as bad actually, but they did the same thing and it was expensive and it didn't have to be that expensive.
Yeah, it's unnecessary expense.
Yeah. So I just made that decision. And then of course, because I'm me, I flew the day it opened. So, you know, I always try to fly like on big Microsoft days. So that,
I am prone to booking hotels where I suspect they're going to want me early and just canceling if it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I thought about this actually. I could have booked some kind of a flight thing in advance, I guess. But you know what?
You only fight so hard.
Yeah, I tried.
Yeah. Well, normally I would be doing podcasts from the event, but they decided they didn't want a podcasting space. And I'm like, do I want to find another gig or do I want to go home after, you know, I would have flown from Lithuania to Chicago.
I was going to say, it's not like you haven't traveled enough.
Yeah. It's not like I've been stuck at home, you know, with nothing to do.
To what do you ascribe this change in Microsoft's attitude? I mean, why wouldn't they want to have podcasts there?
I think it's a new leadership team for the Ignite show. You know, so there's been shuffling around, and they've got a lot of learning to do. It's complicated.
I think there was
they didn't know that this is what you did. In other words,
they didn't have anything to do for a couple of years, and they all left.
Yep.
And now there's a new group coming up, and they just don't know what they're doing.
Effectively, Microsoft is relearning how to do events.
Yeah.
And so you got to have the conversations over again. So now there's plenty of product teams that were reaching out to me saying, hey, you're going to do the podcast, right? Can we get this and this? So
you're like,
I happily forward that all on to them. It's like, if you want me, it takes a few weeks to set this up. Let's figure it out. And they're like, no, they didn't budget for it in advance. So there's only so much they can do. And it ended up being just not practical.
You know, the irony for me, I'd have to go look at this, is that I flew yesterday, right? So yesterday was a really busy travel day. But if I were to go back and look at what I got done, and you know, I've got Laurent writing news as well, is incredible. I mean, we probably published 12, 15 articles yesterday or something.
Crazy.
I probably wrote 5 to 7 myself. 2 of them were premium articles. Like it was a good day.
That's the other side. You don't really need to be there anymore.
No.
Well, sometimes it's good to be in person, see people, you know.
The only way I got Woolsey back on the show was to see him at Build and go, dude, right? Like,
I know.
You can send an email to your blue in the face. There's certain connections you make when you're in person.
That's right. You make eye contact for 1 second, it's priceless. It's
or
no, it really is.
Depending.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's jail or, you know, superstardom. It could be, it's the spectrum, but it can be very good. This is true of everything, you know, in-person meetings. When I was at the company I was at previously, we talked online every week and we got nothing done.
Yeah.
And then we would meet in New York for an afternoon and all of a sudden stuff happened, you know? And that's...
No, I remember hanging out in a hotel room with you for a day and laying out an entire year's worth of editorial content. You could have batted that back and forth in email for a year. And
we did. We did for 2 years. Yeah. Did nothing. Yep. Nothing happened.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's... Anyway, we're not there. So
No.
I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I have mixed feelings about it. I've already heard from a couple of people who said, "Hey, you know, where are you?"
Where are you? Yeah, I've got a bunch of those.
Like I actually wanted to see.
It sounds like you're a little miffed at Microsoft for not doing it right.
No. The two issues I raised are separate, right? There's the continual second-class citizenship of Windows, which is a problem. You know, that this is the center of my career, so that's, you know, As far as Ignite goes, it's not. That one's not personal to me. It's just yeah, I wish they had gotten their act together. If they had, I would have. My wife and I would have gone from Mexico to there to home. But you know what? It's busy. We have got this. The 3 big holidays are coming up. My daughter's graduating from college soon. We got to go figure that out. There's going to be a lot of driving and moving of things and whatever. We're busy. So, I mean, honestly, having a kind of a week of downtime between things is not so horrible. So,
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, and Richard, I mean, I think, his year speaks for itself. You can look, you don't have to know. All you have to do is watch the show, and he's somewhere different. I don't know how he does it. I've said that many times. I mean, you travel a lot. It's
I would be there if I was doing the podcast junket thing. I would have a good time, and it would have been a very challenging to have done those 2 weeks abroad right before.
Yep.
Because you're wrangling a lot of podcasters. You see me play that game.
Yes.
It's a complicated task. But,
yep.
So
it's enjoyable.
So does it? You're not saying that it means this is a reflection of the kind of the end of the in-person conference?
No, not at all. This
No.
This is them relearning how to do in-person conferences.
Yes,
It's weird that they don't have the institution, some way of preserving that institutional knowledge.
That's not how this company
put it in
works.
loop or something.
Yeah, no, the way that build went well enough that I thought, okay, here we go. They got it. They waited longer after the pandemic, ended than a lot of companies did. And it got weird after a while. 2020, obviously, I understand. 2021 got it. And then 2022, you're like, really? And then 2023, you're like, oh, come on, guys. Are you serious? Like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
So they went a long time. Microsoft, these events, we'll go through only a little bit of it. I mean, it's an explosion of information. And I don't know. They could do a better job of figuring that stuff out, but they're figuring it out. So I think they'll get there. It will come back eventually.
For sure. Well, you may not be there, but you're paying attention to it.
I sure am. Yep. Yeah. So there's a lot going on, and I think this is something that's going to bleed into next week, maybe literally in my case. And then into the coming year. But, a couple of things just to kind of level set this or whatever. We've been talking for a long time now, a couple of years. We reference about what Microsoft is doing with AI. We reference the Stevie Batish stuff, build, not this past build, but the previous build. He talked about those 3 app models.
B-side, inside, outside.
Mm-hmm. And now what we're seeing is something he did talk about, it was a year and a half ago, where he actually referred to inside. Is that the third one? Yeah, the inside ones, right? As potential, he said you could think of these things as agents. They will become more intelligent.
I think that was outside. The third one is outside.
Outside, they'll go off and do things on your behalf in an autonomous way, right? And that's literally what Microsoft is announcing. Or has announced.
They're not alone. Like all of the movers and shakers in this space are all about agentic right now.
That's right. I don't like the word, but we're going to live with it.
Bad.
So, it's kind of got it in there. It's
so what
like,
does it mean? What is it?
It means, I just real quick. So just to take a step back, Microsoft has been talking about and allowing developers and IT pros to create things that have been called agents or something like agents for some time. The thing that puts agents over the top in this era is the LLMs that they're going to run against, right? Mm-hmm. That, they've had all these different ways of doing this, but now, thanks to generative AI, just at least we'll say LLM capabilities, they become much more interesting. So the way I think, and I'm curious, maybe Richard will define this slightly differently, but to me, all these things are online services that you configure to respond to certain events, perhaps, and to come back when something happens. So I actually, Leo, I referenced this last week, but when we were buying our apartment in Mexico City, we were playing there's a term for this, geo arbitrage, I think, or where we're paying in US dollars, but we have to buy it in pesos. There's an exchange rate, and that exchange rate goes up and down every day. So my wife went to some service and said, alert me when the exchange rate goes over 20, like 20 to 1. 20.5 to 1 was the one she was looking for. And so every time that happened, she would transfer some amount of money into an account we had that was in pesos, and we get a good exchange rate. And by her math, she believes we save somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 doing this because she favorably played the exchange rate. right? In the years since, the peso has done tremendously well. The dollar's done poorly. And the exchange rate changed to 17 to 1 at one point. I think it even went into 16 point something to 1. And so we don't care anymore. So we just go on with our life. So right after the election, my wife all of a sudden got an alert on her phone. She looked down and said, hey, the exchange rate's 20.5 to 1 again. It's the first time she's gotten that thing in 3 years. She's like, huh.
The agent never stopped working.
And it's just sitting out there doing its thing. It's like a simpler or an as simple example might be a Google flight alert. Like I would like to, I'm going to go on some trip. I don't care when I go, but let me know when this particular flight falls under a certain dollar amount. And at that point I will go book it. And so Google will send you an email or whatever, however they alert you. It's that sort of thing, but operating perhaps against an LLM or a set of LLMs you could imagine in the Microsoft Graph sense with Microsoft 365, you might be working against some kind of a corporate data set.
I would also say softer metrics. Like she's looking at a particular exchange rate from a particular source, not across all possible sources. And also right. She's setting the thresholds herself. She's saying, this is the number I care about, as opposed to give me the optimal number.
But this isn't like AI. You do that with if this then that. That's
sure. No, but it is AI. So I'm being overly simplistic. My examples are pre-AI examples. So, right. Okay. Which is
but it's still agentic, would you say, or does agentic imply AI?
Well, agentic as a branding term is explicitly
so is AI, right?
Yeah.
I mean, AI is a marketing term designed to relieve people of their money. In fact, generally speaking, AI
and also their common sense.
AI is what you call it when it doesn't work. As soon as it does work, it gets a new name, right? It becomes large language models or
something we've had forever since the von Neumann architecture, which is a deterministic code where you say, periodically poll this data source. If this number goes up, do that. That's not AI. That's a step-by-step deterministic program.
Maybe I poisoned the pool by being
I'm just specific. Saying. But it is important because I do think AI does something different. It's a little more non-deterministic. We're not really sure what it's doing. We know how it's doing it, but we don't know exactly what's going on in its little coding brain. It's not as simple as saying this than that. So when Microsoft says agentic, presumably they're talking not about deterministic programming.
I do compare it though to the if then that type thing because I think but for a different reason. Because conceptually, I think people can like my wife's thing with the exchange rate or Google flight thing. It's very simple. It's a simple concept. Like a non-technical normal person could be like, I completely understand why I would want to do this. The if then that stuff can get complex. Like it can get into an area where a lot of people might look at that and say, yeah, I can see the value in this. Power automate type
now
thing.
You're coding though, right?
But now now we're talking about something that's a little complex and it's outside of my and it's possible that some of this agentic stuff may fall into that category, by which I mean it Microsoft will provide some simple examples of things that work, that you could look at and say, that makes sense. I like this. But then there are going to be these more complex things you can build using their tools. They have tools for non-programmers like Copilot Studio, and then they have the Visual Studio type stuff that is for developers. AI Studio, that can get complicated, right? So I don't know. I feel like I always reference Stephen Patish, right? I mean, he's my guiding light here in so many ways, but I always think in terms of things like orchestration, right? This is something I talk about again and again. When he talked about this type of thing, and again, this I think was a year and a half ago. I don't think this was this past year. I think it was 18 months ago-ish. He was talking about, remember he used the term a copilot of copilots.
There you go.
Right. Which is some kind of nerdvana thing, I guess, for like, AI and the Microsoft Graph and all that kind of stuff. But the idea is that AI is going to be the orchestrator. And what it's orchestrating are these online services that are up in the cloud, and then apps that you use as the user. And it's doing this, you have to give it permission and all that. I know privacy people are going to freak out when you start talking about this stuff, but you give it permission, just like you might have given Cortana or whatever, permission because it's your personal assistant, right? It has to know about your schedule and has to have access to your data. The stuff that Cortana might have done was pretty straightforward. Hey, you have a meeting, the stuff that AI might do is potentially, right? If they pull this off, it's going to be a little more complex, right?
And the big thing,
nuanced.
if you talk about the automation side, would have been that it would have done the exchange for you, right? That it might have even fired off the email to negotiate a rate. You start to get into more sophisticated options there.
Right.
Therein lies the question. If I have a bot of some kind that says, normally we just say, give me an alert if an airfare is a good price, as opposed to, hey, I need to travel somewhere in this range to these locations.
Yep.
Buy them when you find the best rate.
Just do it. Yeah. I mean, there's an element of trust there that's, I think is a bridge too far for a lot of people for sure. Yeah. But in my little world, I see a lot of pushback from people who don't want Copilot specifically, whatever that might be. Copilot, and that confuses me, not because I think it's so useful and why wouldn't you want it, but because Copilot is not in your face. Copilot is a thing that you can turn off. Well, unless you hit the stupid key all the time like I do, then it's in your face. But okay, but forget about that. Or you use Microsoft Word or Excel or PowerPoint or whatever it might be, or Outlook, right? You can use Copilot to improve your writing, to help you create a spreadsheet or whatever it might be, but you don't have to, right? The thing about the agentic stuff is that depending on your organization in this case, because right now we're speaking specifically to commercial customers, but this will come to consumers too, is that this may be working on your company's behalf and it's just going to happen. There's an unavoidability aspect to agents that I think will alarm those people who already were alarmed by Copilot to a whole new degree, And I am not a conspiracy theory, whatever. I certainly have my pet peeves and all that kind of stuff. But like I said, I look at Copilot and I think, well, whatever. It's good, bad, and different, but I don't have to use it if I don't want it. I do worry that the agentic capabilities, Richard, what was that? They came up with a service that would rate you as an employee's usage of internal resources and whether or not you were spending enough time in meetings.
What was Viva Learn. Yeah.
Viva Learn, right? So that kind of, that's an agentic capability, right? In a way.
Well, and there's a whole area, especially in the email marketing side of things, or in marketing in general, called in prescriptive analytics. Before LLMs became hip, we were already doing this. And the prescriptive analytics was looking at variations on tickle emails. So you've been to the site, maybe you throw some stuff in the cart, but you haven't bought anything.
Right.
When's the right time for me to send you an email to sort of prompt you to come back? What's the language in it? So we'd write a bunch of variations. The tool would look at the response rate and tune itself.
That's cool.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it's cool, but it's also scary.
Oh, it's super creepy,
right? Like,
we're immediately in the uncanny valley of software. Right?
Well, it's algorithmic. It's the same thing TikTok does. It's just observing behavior and adjusting for that behavior.
Yeah, and that's where you get.
But that's what the Terminator does too.
and then it shoots you.
Yeah, then it kills you. It keeps going until it finally kills you. That's that. Yeah.
Now, I mean, getting away from the marketing side of things, I watched the prescriptive analytic models for deciding when to service steam turbines.
Yeah, see, that's good stuff. Right.
Then it was based on when's the part going to wear out and the thing's actually going to fail versus when's the maximum utilization. Like, it was all these balancing act. There was also a prescriptive model for when to evacuate ahead of wildfires, knowing that evacuations cause injuries and death themselves. So do you evacuate earlier when it's less urgent, even though you're incurring more cost to decrease harm, or do you evacuate later? And so a lot of these models just analyze all the data together on it.
I mean, I'm sorry. I just said I'm not conspiracy theory guy, blah, 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 whatever. But I grew up reading Asimov, the rules of robotics, et cetera, et cetera.
Which, by the way, science fiction. Right.
I understand, but this is what colors all of our views of this stuff. But it would also, I think, will be pertinent in a moment, or something like HAL 9000 in 2001, where it gets these two conflicting commands,
right?
And then suddenly it's it's better for the mission if it has to kill one of the astronauts to get, to the next.
To be clear, it decided to kill all of the astronauts was the best way to get a successful outcome to the mission.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So in the human view, HAL went insane, but in its view, or in the view of
completely rational,
it was just logical.
If you make a whole universe into paper clips, it's like this was the mission.
Yeah. No HAL 9000.
So in other words,
has ever made a mistake.
In something like the example you gave, where we're looking at, like, we can't prevent forest fires, but we want to make sure that we get out in front of these things as quickly as possible. Harm. We launch the planes, minimize harm, etc. The first thing they're going to do is eliminate you, the human being, from this process, because you're the problem. You're the slowness. You're the.
If you burned all the houses down in advance, you don't have to evacuate it.
But I mean, that's okay. These are all nightmare scenarios of poorly designed. But not all. I use
Windows every day. Of course, they're nightmare scenarios of poorly designed software. That's the point. This is the company making the software. I mean, yes.
Let's be clear. They're making tools so that you can make these software.
Yes, of course, right.
They're not going to make the paper clips. They're going to let you make the paper clips.
Yeah. So, look, I don't want to come off as kind of a nut job about this, but so many times I see people in our industry kind of overreacting. And I look at this stuff and I'm like, I think I'm going to overreact. It's a little.
And this is where people do talk about AI safety and where some people were worried about AI. I think that's not unreasonable. And really, it comes down to, who do you trust to create this? And who do you trust? Okay, not Microsoft. Do you trust OpenAI? Do you trust Anthropic? Do you trust Meta? Who do you trust?
You get that Microsoft's punting on this. They're not creating it. They're just giving you the tools so you can create it.
Yeah, but they
trust you.
But they're making.
You're telling me that you wouldn't use Bing Forest Fighter Service to do what you just described. Like I think every one of those companies you mentioned is chaotically evil. So it's kind of hard to who do I trust? Kind of
a new fundamental question is big tech. Do we trust it? And should it be trusted? And what they really seem to be doing is becoming more and more rapacious and more and more shitified. And then maybe you don't want to trust them with your AI.
I think most of these tech companies are fairly panicked at the prospect of not winning this current race.
That's true.
And so they're being more aggressive.
They're throwing protections out the window.
Yeah.
As fast as they can.
One of the things Microsoft talked about a lot this week, I'm not going to get this term right, but maybe I am going to get it right. Let's see if I can find it. There's the human intervention thing. Yeah, they call it human in the loop. Right. So there's an approval
That's a military
scheme.
term. Right?
Yeah, of course it is, because that's where this is headed. That's my point. It's gonna be literally Terminator robot. But again, it's hard to imagine that this process doesn't eventually determine that the human in the loop is the problem. So we have these things that are being automated that were possibly jobs that people did. Okay, we're eliminating those jobs. I think we all understand that. So now we got this one guy in a lab coat or whatever in some kind of a tower, saying yay or nay to these things, making sure that the logic is sound or whatever. But I mean, isn't he the problem now? It's like
and I don't
literally
think
the Terminator plot.
It's going to be spread across a lot of people, all trying to make those decisions.
Right.
This is honestly, the fundamental question of our time. I think.
Right.
Well,
look, it's logical that a service that would act on your behalf is a next step beyond. We have this capability where you can bring up a prompt or whatever interface and say, I would like this thing, make me this thing, or help me with this thing, or summarize this, whatever it is. Like, that's fine, but that's a very manual process. It's also kind of a weird throwback that we're suddenly typing again in a world which, we've moved on to graphical user interfaces, for 40
Well, eventually it should be
ago.
a voice interface for all of us.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Yeah. But here we are doing this thing. I did this morning. I typed in a prompt to get a pretty picture, That's
not
works.
the end of the world, is it?
No, it's not. But the next prompt's going to be like, now make the world look like this picture. And maybe that is the end of the world. I mean, or worse yet. I mean, so we talk about, I love all the terminology of AI, like hallucinations, hilarious, right? Yeah. We have this fun new word.
Not a good word.
We used to just call it what it is, a bug, or whatever, a logic flaw, or whatever. A training, a literal bug got into the training data, and now everything is colored wrong. whatever it is.
It's more like it's something that the engine made up. I don't think it's a bug in the training.
Well,
it's
made up, but it's making it up based on its input. Like, in other words, if you're going to train the data on the internet and then you ask it something for like an objective fact, what is 1 + 1? And it's like, there are 11,000 different answers to this. So we're going to have to, deterministically decide which of these is the most accurate.
But a common hallucination would be, who is Paul Thurrott? Paul Thurrott died in 1984.
That's what I'm saying.
The question is, where did it get that? I think reason
clearly that one came from Reddit, and then it was
or
Wikipedia, where anyone
from anything.
Yeah,
it's literally just putting two words together that it doesn't understand.
Yeah, so like a year ago or whatever, in the past year, when you talk to someone normal, non-technical about AI, or you'll see these warnings everywhere. You run the Chat GPT or whatever. It says, "Hey, just so you know, it's not always right. You should check check the facts," and everyone's like, okay. And no one does, and then legal documents go out, policy changes, and
that's going to become, I think you're right.
But now it's going to be automated.
Check the facts.
Now it's going to be automated. Now you're telling me this human in the loop potentially will be checking this after the fact.
Right.
What is he, standing over the smoldering remains of like civilization? He's like, "Hey, I found the bug." It's funny. It's funny. I mean,
where's that undo button?
Yeah, I don't know if you're gonna laugh when you find out what it was. Hello, anybody here?
This does take me back to a conversation I've been having since the very earliest days of OpenAI a couple of years ago, which is AI is fine. Don't give it agency, not agentic, but don't give it agency.
Well, those words
don't give it the nuclear codes. Don't give it weapons. Don't give it things that have agency in the real world. And that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, well, or could do. Nobody's actually done this. And this, again, I mentioned the military reference because that was a very specific
it. Ukraine is doing it, right?
No, this is specifically what the Defense Department said they wouldn't do, right? Is that in the end, a person still makes the call.
They wouldn't go into Laos. But I mean, look.
No, and you can still question it, because certainly the software is framing up the view. Right. So that the person making a decision only sees, one option.
Yeah, and some poor grunt who's in a double wide trailer in Austin is going to say yes or no, based on the information the AI gives it.
That's what I'm saying. Imagine it's become smart enough that it's like, look, we're going to pretend this guy's still in the loop. We're going to feed him bogus data so that we get the answer we think is correct. And then we're just going to do that thing we would have done if we didn't have this shackle to begin with.
So we don't think that anywhere in the world, maybe Ukraine, AIs are making kill decisions?
Not officially. Now, that being said, there was a case in the UN specifically about a drone carrying a 40 millimeter grenade with an image recognizer.
See?
So that doesn't mean Ukraine's deploying it, just that this product existed and it
with
is
an image recognizer.
Illegal. Yeah, so it recognizes it's tracking for a particular face. When it sees it, it charges towards it and explodes.
So you understand this is the reason that Microsoft stopped selling facial recognition technology to police, because it was biased toward people of color.
And it's why Google engineers rose up when Project Maven came along for Google. They didn't want to be doing that kind of work. But I think those days they look quaint.
All right. So to take it out of the apocalypse just slightly and look at it maybe from Microsoft's perspective, especially from like office productivity, right? What they're really, when you think about it, like just forget about the AI, the scary stuff, the Terminator robot that is literally going to kill you in your sleep this week. But if you just forget about that for a second, it's really about efficiency, right? The office automation has been with us since the days of AT&T talking about paperless offices that we still haven't achieved, by the way. This is, what are the things that are hard for people to accomplish? How can we help them get over that? How can we help them get by that? And, you can look at those positively or negatively. There's all, in the same way that I talk about, these services that create images, and I'm not hiring a graphics artist or a painter or whatever it is to make these images. I'm using AI. So I guess there's a job there that's kind of gone away. But for me, this is more efficient, cost effective, et cetera, et cetera. What are the doldrums that what we used to call a knowledge worker, faces in a day? Or you come in the morning, like, God, Richard might remember, Outlook 98, 2000, one of the versions a million years ago, started giving you this kind of daily view. You'd log into the app and it was like, here's what your day is going to look like. It was always terrible, right? It was all these meetings and whatever, but you would have this day view or whatever, my day or whatever they called it. And, people, I think, use Teams like that kind of a dashboard, but this is the type of thing where it's kind of an advanced version of that. It's like, we'll use AI to say, look, these are the most important emails like that you got overnight. Like you need to go do this one first. Or, you're meeting with a person from whatever team and you met with this person 17 months ago. His first kid's name is this. And you talked about this and, that kind of helpful, like you have a little piece like the guys whispering in your ear. It's like,
you already get the Viva emails if you're using Office 365 saying, hey, you wrote an email yesterday saying you would do this for this person by today. Have
Did you
done it?
Yeah. Now they'll be like, we know you didn't do it. So we can tell you didn't do it. So
asking rhetorically, asking for a friend.
Yeah. We just said, right. Exactly.
Because I don't think you did.
No, that's what I want to hear from an AI. I want to hear an AI say, I'm just asking questions.
Just asking questions. People tell me, I hear.
Yep.
According to people in the know, you have not done their job.
Yeah, the opposite of not Clink. What was like the Schultz on?
I know nothing.
But he's like, I see everything.
Yeah.
I hear everything. I know.
And we're starting to have these bots sit in the Teams calls now for exactly that reason. They keep better notes, and they do when we say, okay, well, I'll take that on. It's writing the summaries and saying you agreed to these things. I'll play you back the transcript if you want.
Just in the middle of a meeting, it'll be like, I think Paul's playing Call of Duty. I don't think he's actually paying attention.
Yeah.
So we agree, though, that these are very useful tools that can be really huge in business.
Yeah, potentially. Sure, of course.
Yeah, but they have some potential risk. Would you advocate against them for that reason?
I think if it's we take risks all the time for potential benefit.
Right. We drive down the highway at 60 miles an hour and just pray that the other guy's not going to turn into our lane.
I just gave I gave a talk and I kind of mentioned this story and I told the story again in the podcast, but I go back to that cloud computing thing and the exchange administrator freaking out because like you're telling me that my final act as exchange administrator is going to be handing over the reins to my company's email to Microsoft. And the answer is yes. The world has evolved and you haven't. And by the way, your company does not exist for email infrastructure. Like, what are you talking about? You're not in a place where you can make a good decision for your company because you're worried about your job. And all you've been doing for the past 10 years is every other Exchange version, you've been doing a migration. And that you sort of thought you were just going to ride out your whole career doing this, but the world changed.
The joke is that there's still a role for the administrator on that. It's just doing more valuable things than that.
Yes, and
he's still involved with email. He's just
that's sort of the point. Like you may or may not have a role at this company. I guess we'll see, but like it's up to you to kind of make yourself valuable. And there's a whole bunch of stuff you weren't getting around to that was more preventative, right? You've never set the rules around monitoring for harassment via email. You've never bothered with box management because you've been too busy doing the day in, day out, crashing in the surf or keeping a mailbox running. The positive spin here is that instead of being reactive now, which is the big story with IT, right? You're going to now be able to be proactive. You're going to get to those things like AI, if it works correctly and works well, will automate those things that for you were drudgery and time consuming and prevented you from doing the things that were meaningful.
I've seen Microsoft use line a bunch of time, removing the toil from the work.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So that you are
eventually it's going to be the removing you from the work. But the toil.
That's always the implication, Paul, except that there's no evidence it's actually true. Right. Like the reality is there's higher and higher level work that wasn't gotten to. I don't know anybody in IT that's gotten to the bottom of the to-do list. In fact, they couldn't get off the third item. So
I'm not disagreeing. I listen. In fact, I would just say personally, though I am aware of this, it's very easy to fall into this. It sounds true trap. There's probably a term for this, but even though I am well aware of that, and I kind of try to preach against it and think for yourself and all that kind of stuff. Yes, but I feel I feel like with AI, I've been pretty clear headed so far. It's definitely been all over the map because AI happens so quick, and but. I look at this thing and I'm like, okay, I don't know. Yeah. For me, I've hit that
with
threshold.
The science fiction tropes.
Yeah.
But,
fair enough.
All the way back to the Luddites, after they smashed the machinery, it was rebuilt. And all of those folks ended up being supervisors running higher automation clothing.
Yeah.
And the clothing price dropped worldwide.
Yeah, right.
Right. I mean, that's what actually happened, is that the automation made it possible for the market to become many times larger. Yes, many travel agents lost their job when we put travel online, but the travel industry grew by orders of magnitude and employs far more people.
The good travel agents still have a job. So
but
good humans, you used to be a good.
But if you said to a younger person, especially, or I keep saying normal person, I realize that's vaguely insulting, but I'm including myself in the abnormal part of that list. That there are people who would sit at a desk and type away on a computer and book things for you. They'd be like, "What is this?
Why would you do that?
You're describing? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense." But
yet that's only 20 years, and it's already irrational.
Right. Well, but then again, 100 years ago, something like that didn't exist. There was no such. I mean,
you were going to fly through the air.
Yeah. I mean, well, and just the notion of traveling for fun. Like I would travel because my people were being killed, and I had to get out of here. Like that was the only reason I would ever move.
Traveling for a better future. I'm
traveling
my life traveling. So
we're talking a post World War II thing, basically. I mean, basically. This notion that you're doing this for fun. You're not invading the country. You say you're going to go there and eat and drink and stuff. That's not.
And then you're going to come back.
Curious. And you're coming back. Yeah, exactly. What are you doing? Yeah, and you're taking pictures. Yeah. There's a whole lot of stuff there.
That's all.
I just can we take a quick break because we're getting
of course
long in the tooth, as one says,
as we do,
and we have lots more to talk about. But you are watching Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell reunited, and it feels so good.
So good.
Oh boy, without the bad wine.
The peaches and herb of Microsoft journalism.
Yeah.
Our show today brought to you by ThreatLocker. Do zero-day exploits and supply chain attacks keep you up at night? You don't get much more serious than that, right? Well, you don't have to worry anymore because there's a way to protect yourself, to harden your security with ThreatLocker. ThreatLocker is really amazing. It is affordable, zero trust that protects your entire network. Worldwide companies like JetBlue trust ThreatLocker to secure their data and, unlike maybe some other airlines, keeping their business operations flying high. Here's the deal. ThreatLocker takes a proactive, and this is the key, these three words are important, deny by default approach. Deny by default approach to cybersecurity. That means it blocks every action. It blocks every process, blocks every user unless explicitly authorized by your team. That makes sense, right? In the past, we've assumed, hey, if they're in the network, they're cool, man. We know that's not true anymore. So this gives you much more granular control of what's going on. ThreatLocker helps you do this zero trust thing and provides a full audit, by the way, of every authorization, every action. So then that's so useful for risk management and compliance. Plus, they have a great 24/7 US-based support team. They will support you in onboarding and beyond. This is a way to stop the exploitation of trusted applications within your organization, to keep your business secure, to protect yourself from ransomware. Organizations across any industry could benefit from ThreatLocker's ring fencing. That's what they call it. You have inside the ring and outside the ring. Ring fencing isolates critical and trusted applications from unintended uses or weaponization. It limits attackers' lateral movement within the network. Boom, they run up against the ring fence. ThreatLocker's ring fencing is so good it was able to foil a number of attacks that weren't stopped by traditional EDR. And I guess the best example is the SolarWinds Orion attack. Companies using ring fencing, no problem. No problem. Oh, and by the way, ThreatLocker works for Macs too. So your entire network can be protected with ThreatLocker. Get unprecedented visibility and control of your cybersecurity quickly, easily, and cost effectively. And I mean it. When I went out and priced ThreatLocker, I was blown away because I assumed, oh no, this is going to cost. No, it's really affordable. Anybody can afford this. Everybody should use it. ThreatLocker's zero trust endpoint protection platform offers a unified approach to protecting users, devices, and networks against the exploitation of zero-day vulnerabilities. Get a free 30-day trial and learn more about how ThreatLocker can help mitigate unknown threats and ensure compliance. Visit threatlocker.com. That's threatlocker.com. I had a great conversation with these guys. I was blown away. And just, I mean, look at the reviews. Look at what people say about ThreatLocker, and you'll see this is what you need. ThreatLocker.com. We thank them so much for supporting Windows Weekly. And you support us, of course, if they ask. Tell them I heard it on Windows Weekly. Thank you, ThreatLocker. I really like this AI conversation. I don't mean to truncate it, but I think it is very important. And when you're going on about agentic stuff, it's important to understand what that is.
The word agentic is going to come up a lot this year. It's just, you might as well just rip the scab. It's happening. You know?
I agree.
So this is the start of it. So
excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry.
No apologies necessary. Thank you. What else is going on?
New hardware.
I got to send you that Snapdragon thing. I still haven't. I have to go down to the UPS store.
No worries. Yeah. So that box was so successful. Microsoft's doing it again. No,
200 very happy users.
Yeah. It's impossible. So what they've announced and are releasing is not until next year. I don't think it's coming out until the spring. Is what is basically a net PC. Remember what were those?
Thin PCs,
thin PCs.
Oracle offered them. Yeah, they had.
Yeah, like Sun Microsystem talked this up, right?
Yeah, the network is the computer or something.
And they were onto something. It was just they were about 20 years too early on that one.
Well, and by the way, can I point out, Paul? For years, I've been saying this is what Microsoft should do. Yep. That the best, most secure way to offer Windows is in the cloud on a thin client.
Which they
you mean to tell me that my last act as Windows administrator is going to be handing over Windows? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, yes, for sure.
If they priced it better. Now, the client's not expensive, right? It's just the monthly fee for Windows
the monthly
in the cloud.
Yeah, that's right. And that varies wildly depending on the resources you have in that cloud PC and the capabilities, et cetera.
Yeah, but it doesn't cost much when you're not using it. Like for intermittent use, it's quite effective.
Good point. Well, we do that.
Yeah,
we do that. Our editors were working on Premiere in the cloud using us. They would spin up Windows when they need it, and they would spin it down. As long as they turned it off, it wouldn't cost us anything.
Yeah, right.
And if you forget about it for a couple of weeks, you get a bill and you're really sad.
Yeah.
Don't leave it on.
To those of us in the sort of what is now like the client, Windows community or whatever, we look at this, we think, could I have one of these, please? With like a
I saw
a
an
Mac
interesting
Mini,
statement though that one of the reasons it's hardened is that it doesn't offer Win32.
Yeah. No, it doesn't really do much locally. It's a very stripped down version of Windows that's just designed to do the connectivity stuff and some basic.
But even in the cloud, you don't have Win32 in the cloud either.
No, you do. It's just
you
Windows.
do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get
No, there's some unspecified Intel processor in this thing. It's probably like a Celeron,
they said a custom OS. Is it a Windows OS or just?
It's Windows. Yeah, it's a stripped down version of Windows. It's probably Windows 10X. They had to do something with it.
It's probably Edge. All you need is Edge, right?
It's a web app. No, I don't. It's unclear, but it has a couple ports and whatever. It's just the basics, but it's a cute little box. I'm intrigued that Leo actually had a really good real world example there because I wonder about this from an IT perspective. How compelling this could be. I mean,
I've certainly talked to some shops that have been all in this for years, right? Like they use virtual desktop going all the way back to Zen with Citrix.
Right.
So that they don't have the machines on board. And this was often when we had remote offices where they're going to be online anyway. So the latency is unavoidable. The bigger thing was control over data. I watched whole dev teams work this way where the code never went to the destination machine. It was all executing in a central repository somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Now, for this to make, back in the day, it was, we had terminal services, like you said, Zen, Citrix, and,
now you have Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365.
Yep, that's right. And yeah.
So the issues would be security, privacy, because if you're uploading, important secret code, you don't want it on somebody's cloud. Microsoft could probably reassure people on that, right?
Generally, is the customer doesn't want the user to have the code.
Right.
So I'm keeping it in the cloud because it's actually safer there.
It's safer there. But it's late. And I mean, if you could play Diablo over the network, latency shouldn't be too much of it.
I played Call of Duty online over the network. Anything is possible. So yes,
depends on the quality connection.
Yeah.
Quality of connection, which most businesses probably have a pretty high speed connection.
Right. I suppose if your needs are minimal, which a lot of people's are, and if, like Richard said, if you only need it sometimes, even better.
Well, the question is, how minimal is this? How much do you give up by doing this? Well, I mean, in theory, it could have
in theory, it could be anything. That's the point. Like in theory, you could be running against a box that is more powerful than anything you'd have at your own desk, right?
You're also no longer upgrading those devices, right? Like, here I am on a 2-year, 3-year.
I know. Well, that's that's part of the. You need to tell me.
I mean, I always thought that this is the best answer Microsoft could offer to the security issues because it's always up to date.
Yep.
It's always patched.
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft has secured their own infrastructure perfectly well over the past year alone. I mean, I wouldn't worry about anything.
Everything's fine. We're fine.
But they'd have to reassure people that the network, network operation centers were.
The first hurdle here is that this is in the cloud. This is not something that's in your cloud. It's not in a private cloud. This is in Microsoft's public cloud, right?
Yeah. And let's face it, they've had better uptime than you did.
No, that's not my. I 100% think it's a great idea. I don't mean it like that. I mean that for some organizations, some people, some whatever, that's the untenable part of it. It's like, well, hold on a second. This isn't in our own whatever it is.
But you're already using Azure. Like that's already true.
Right. No, I'm not. I'm not actually disputing it. But this is the thing. So
I mean, and that being said, if I was responsible for a company infrastructure like this, I would have a separate backup source, which I even have for my own M365. Right. My Synology backs up my M365 instances onto a drive here, just because. So if I lost access to M365 for whatever reason, I'd at least have a copy of everything.
Yep. Okay. Yeah.
Right? So it's sort of a reverse way of thinking. Like I want to work in the cloud, so it doesn't matter where I go and what device it works, but I also want to copy elsewhere.
So if I was on a submarine, Richard.
Yes. I've done this scenario with Jeff Snowden.
He's like, let me make up the stupidest possible example.
We did this for we did this scenario for a ship off the coast of Gabon during the Ebola crisis in 2014.
Oh boy.
Right. Where we did the undersea cables going into the Western Africa were just not fast enough. And so they moved a ship with a couple of racks worth of gear in it. It was basically a localized Azure node to support the healthcare professionals that were fighting the Ebola.
So it's like Azure Arc before there was Azure Arc, essentially. Yeah.
And so it was a way we had a better cell signal coming off that ship into the city in Côte d'Ivoire than they had normally. Yep. And we weren't dependent on any of those things, right? And then every so often it would synchronize. I
mentioned the Exchange story because it's so relevant to everything, but it's this is the same type of thing. I mean, where Windows security and updating and whatever else is not the point of your business.
Yeah, what you do for a living.
People, we want them to sign in securely, authenticate, and get work done, and then go back to their lives. And you're not shipping hardware around the world. You're not configuring laptops and then hope,
The same way you change that Exchange server, that Exchange administrator's life, you're going to change the desktop sysadmin's life too. Right now, he's on he's taking care of 1,500 seats in a mid-sized organization.
Yep.
He's shifted it so that every year he's replacing 25% of those machines under lease. Mm-hmm. And so that's 300 something machines that he handles every year to get redeployed with a team of folks. I put these thin PCs in. I don't have to standardize the machine. You can run different VMs as you need, and they get upgraded all the time.
All right. So you've got this little device, $350 or whatever it is, obviously keyboard, mouse, and some kind of a screen.
Yeah.
And actually, you don't even need that. I mean, you could run this off an iPad if you had to. I mean, right? Because they have that software. Yeah, of course. And okay. I mean, it's interesting. I think connectivity has gotten to the point where this is possible.
Yeah. When you're dealing with 20 millisecond symmetrical gigabit fiber, that's as long as you maintain the bandwidth, you'll be all right. As the number of seats goes up, it gets more challenging.
Just don't do it.
That's a great device to send home. They're not going to do anything else with it, right? You're going to configure. You're going to configure that device so that it can only communicate with the company's instances.
Yep.
The kids aren't going to play on it. There's going to be a very little porn on that device.
I bet you could play Doom on it.
I bet you could.
But no, fair enough. No, you're right. You're right. Okay. No, that's cool. And Microsoft said, by the way, there will be more of these types of devices.
Yeah.
I could imagine hybrid.
Not just from Microsoft. It's a reference device. Right?
Yeah. I mean, there'll be more, right? I mean, and we can get into some
don't we already have such devices?
Yeah,
Anyway.
the thin PC movement's old. Like it's been around a long time, but this is a new wave. And the ARM hardware is especially good for this.
Yeah,
but also the
This
cloud is
ARM.
bigger.
This is not Intel. This is
It
ARM.
also, well, it eliminates, well, this one is, I think is Intel, isn't it? I think this one is, but this is a good point because actually
You could make it out of an Arduino. It doesn't really need a
that's
lot
right.
of
It could be a
horsepower,
Raspberry
too.
5, right? Exactly. And you could have this thing that's super efficient and silent. And if it is ARM, you don't have to worry about compatibility issues anymore because you're running everything.
I love how they show it
anyway.
driving two giant screens.
I know,
too.
yeah.
That's to
Yeah.
reassure you that
Yeah.
you're not. The user experience isn't going to change, really.
Well, there's they've been, there are the Dev Box stuff that Microsoft does for Visual Studio developers, where you're potentially hitting this incredibly powerful computer up in the cloud, and you could have a very thin and light laptop. You could have a Mac. It doesn't matter, right?
It gets better than that. If you're only compiling once a day, you can run a light instance while you're coding, and then give me more CPU. It's time to compile, right?
There you go.
Or actually, you push it off. You push it through.
Yeah,
again,
I mean, this is
somewhere else.
Yeah, this is the initial promise of cloud computing. It's infrastructure when you need it,
Only
and
what
you're
you
not
use.
paying for, and when you're not using it, et cetera.
And
et
instead of me sending $1,500 laptops out to my employees to work from home, I'm sending a $300 head unit that's not good for anything else.
No, it's okay. Yeah, no, that's a good argument. I like it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm strictly thinking from a system admin's perspective. I don't know that a consumer wants this. Although, isn't this the machine you want a grandparent to have just because they can't break it, really?
They could call it Web TV.
Yeah, there you go.
No, okay. I'm coming around to it. I'll say, Azure virtual machines, and then they did Windows 365. I was like, I don't quite. I mean, obviously there are reasons. There are certain things. I didn't see it as kind of a mainstream thing, but actually, using my own words against me, which is probably smart. Thinking back to that Exchange guy, it's the same equation, right? Mm-hmm. At some point, this is the problem, right? We're spending too much on the people and the hardware and the maintenance and upkeep and blah, 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 whatever, and of Windows in this case, and Windows PCs. And that is not what the point of this business is, right? It's, Okay.
There's a great side. I've done a bunch of run as on AVD on Azure Virtual Desktop.
Yeah.
The subtle thing you don't get until you really start using this is that when the user logs off, like that instance is actually dismantled.
Yeah.
So that when you start it back up again, it literally rebuilds it. You get a fresh copy of Windows each time.
Nice?
There is no.
It's sort of
rot.
like Windows Sandbox does something similar, except there's a state that you get back here.
Yeah,
you're connecting to your data, et cetera.
That's right.
Yeah. No,
So
good.
it's kind of a kiosk effect, and it just means
it. Yeah.
you were saying nothing's going to change. There's a big thing that's going to change.
This is
it's
That's the
tech
Chromebook
support.
experience.
Yeah.
I mean,
really?
right.
But you still get to run that one weird, cranky Win32 app that you need, except now it lives in a sandbox in the cloud with an administrator making sure it doesn't get out of hand.
Exactly.
You don't have to
I
make
think
it run on everybody's machine.
By the way, they said that these are Copilot Plus too, right?
Okay.
That's so weird.
That's weird, but okay, that's fine. I mean, that's fine. Because it makes sense to run AI locally in the data center that is also hosting the cloud AI that is too expensive to run because, I can't do the math on that. But look, this is when it was Terry Morrison. This was the event they announced the Surface laptop. Microsoft did an education event one spring, so 2015, 2017, somewhere in there, and he's walking around with a US thumb key, and the idea was USB thumb key that you have a lab in this case of students, and we need to reset these things between classes. And here's this goofy kind of sneaker net way to do this. This is something I dealt with in the 1990s. I worked at a lab at a school, and same situation. They were older, obviously. They were big honking desktop computers running WordPerfect and things like that. But the idea was that you would reboot and it would run a script and it would wipe things out and bring things back. And the next students would come in. That would take many minutes, but they would come in the next class, whenever that was, and they would have a fresh computer. Everything was back to the way it was supposed to be. that's still a concern. I mean, this is, and now we can do this in the cloud and it's clean.
Yeah. And here, let's imagine you're running classes in a day. You've got 4 classes that day of 30 kids each.
Yep.
You pre-run them all. So all those 120 VMs are already ready to go. Right. And as one group of kids finishes and logs out, you destroy them. They don't need them anymore.
It happens automatically.
But you're not waiting for them to start up. They're already ready. So when the next kids sit down, they light up. That's the great thing about the cloud, right? You don't have to own that hardware.
Even just a basic productivity work or whatever, that experiences this kind of Windows rot where the thing slows down over time. You get wonkiness, right? This is the one thing you have to admit as a Windows user. One day you'll run an app that runs every day. And it doesn't start up right, or something happens, or it stops connecting to the webcam, or whatever it is. Like this is a way to. This is an extreme way, but isn't a way just to get around that.
This is the kiosk effect. You get back to the starting state every day you turn it on.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Well, and I just think. I mean, again, I'm thinking totally enterprise because I think that's why you keep me around.
Yeah,
but
and that's what this is for. That's the audience. Yeah,
this could be a good consumer experience too.
I think. Look, one of the things we're going to talk about in a few minutes is some of the Windows security innovations, for lack of a better term, that they discussed this week at Ignite, and very much focused on commercial customers, right? Businesses, education, government, et cetera. But a lot of this stuff is also coming to consumers and will eventually come to consumers. And that's kind of the point. When you look at something like the security baseline of a Copilot Plus PC, it's astronomically in a different class than a normal computer. And there are things that take long periods of time. That's something I just wrote about this in the context of Copilot Plus PCs. TPMs were kind of invented in the time frame from Longhorn when they were looking at, and at the time it was like, what are you doing? Like, what is the point of this? And now they're just standard equipment. The switch even to like 64 bits started with XP, went probably mainstream, maybe Windows 8, Windows 10, somewhere in there. And now it's the only, platform for Windows. So we don't even do 32-bit anymore. So sometimes these things take a long time, but this stuff is absolutely going to come down to consumers. Yeah. And then I don't know, I feel like for a lot of people, it's going to be software, but you'll, when the time comes to upgrade to a new computer and people might be like, well, maybe this is when I go to a Mac or a Chromebook. What Microsoft might be selling, or PC makers maybe, would be here's you had a pretty good experience with this IdeaPad or whatever it was. How about you buy an IdeaPad thin client and, you have a Microsoft 365 subscription or whatever we're calling it now, and you get access to this thing that's kind of awesome up in the cloud, maybe. And by the way, it's always going to be safe and clean and work great.
Yeah,
maybe. I can see it, I guess.
Yeah, and when it does go out, it goes out for everybody.
Yeah. So taking the day off. The whole world's taking the day off. Yeah. It's a thing. On the extreme other end of this spectrum, so we have the Copilot Plus PC, right? And so these are the PCs that have these additional hardware requirements. Instead, not that anyone would buy such a thing, but you could buy or you could make a 4 gigabyte RAM Windows 11 computer, I guess. That would be stupid, but you could. Slow storage, et cetera, et cetera. Copilot Plus PCs, 16 gig minimum. I think it's 256 on the RAM, NPU. We all know the stuff, really modern. It's all the latest chipsets and all that kind of stuff. Those things launched on Snapdragon back in June without that major new feature recall, and not a lot else to show for it in the AI sense. And so since then, Microsoft's been expanding the platform to AMD and Intel, obviously, but also adding new functionality. So they announced some new features for these computers, I think back in September, October. I don't remember. September, October, somewhere in there. None of it has appeared, but they're talking that up more now during Ignite as well. Like Click to Do, is one of the big ones, and also Recall, by the way, right? So Recall has been delayed multiple times. I enjoy every time they talk about Recall and talk about all the new features that they're adding, and I can point to the original documents and say, are these really new features? We'll see. But whatever, we're going to talk about Windows in a minute, but there's some deep, architectural stuff going on in Windows for security, especially, but not just security, but in addition to the clown carve stupidity features that we talk about every week, there's actual, like computer science occurring too. So, there's a little bit, we get a little bit of both. But yeah, I don't know what to think of any of this AI stuff. I keep, and by AI stuff, I want to be clear. I mean, local AI stuff running against the NPU. I feel like this is a solution in search of a problem in many ways.
Oh yeah, no. And it's a panic, right? Like,
yeah. And
we need an implementation of these LLMs for information workers that really makes a difference.
Yeah. It has to run on device. It has to require them to buy a new computer. It's very important. That's a big part of it. And I keep coming back to the same thing.
I mean, even by far the most successful LLM right now is GitHub Copilot, and you don't need to run it locally. That's not a thing, but it's got a utilization. Like, it's almost a justification for the stack for a very small sector of the world.
It would probably run great locally. I mean, honestly, especially if you were doing something very specific. I'm working in a specific language in a specific framework.
Yeah, I just don't think you care, because you're online anyway. You've got to be interacting with GitHub anyway. That's your normal workflow. What's the difference?
Yep. Yeah. So
I don't think the customer cares about running locally. I really don't. I think Microsoft cares about it, but I don't think the customer cares.
Yeah. The thing customers will care about will be these specific features that improve their life, and they just won't understand that it's because it's running locally. That's the problem with it. So if you edit video, for example, I mean, obviously you need a bunch of horsepower and graphics capabilities, et cetera, et cetera. There's a growing list of capabilities that run off an NPU that are frankly rather amazing. But I'm talking about a pretty small audience there. So when you talk about mom pop and whoever, these people are kind of non-technical, and you're like, all right, well, what's in Windows or whatever in Copilot plus PC that's going to mean anything to them?
Yeah, I don't think they.
I'm like, geez,
they just want it to work where it runs. And so, to the point, you're going to make a pricing difference. The cloud version costs more than the local. For a small group of folks, that's going to matter. Most people, if you charge it all, they're not going to use it.
I mean, for a Snapdragon computer, the big thing to me is the efficiency and performance and all that stuff, and the battery life. And I tweeted about this yesterday. It's not a joke. We got on a plane. It was 4.5 hour flight, but one of the things they told us up front is, like, the first half of the plane doesn't have power. Sorry, you're not going to be able to charge your devices. And the people next to us were freaking out. They literally were handing their phones off to the flight attendants who could bring them back to the back of the plane and charge them for them. So I was like, no problem. I have a Copilot plus PC. Boop, open it up, charged my wife's phone and my phone, ran this thing the entire flight, and got a bunch of work done and had 55% battery.
They should put you in MAD.
That's awesome. And that's life changing. Now, did I do a single local AI anything during that flight? No, not even one. Right? That didn't matter in the slightest. Had I, it would have been super efficient, but I just don't. There's nothing there that's compelling. So honestly, the only compelling thing they've ever announced is recall, and that's the one thing they keep, delaying. And I'm like, but I think I don't know that this will actually be. Actually, most of this probably won't be local. In fact, it definitely won't be. But tied to the agentic stuff and to the expansion of Copilot capabilities in Microsoft 365. They're going to be changing the Windows UI a little bit to accommodate these things. And of course, the apps themselves are going to change as well. But there's a bunch of new capabilities coming across Microsoft 365 that will run across the cloud. But I was talking to Brad this morning. He was telling me, he's like, there's something weird going on with Windows 11, because I think it's like the beta channel. They changed the way things are rendered in the taskbar all of a sudden, out of nowhere. They never announced anything. And I said, I think it's because they're using it on stage at Ignite to show off these new Microsoft 365 capabilities that run off a little page or whatever they call it in the taskbar. And they needed something to run it against, And so they skipped the canary channel. They just went right to beta. And, that work that's happening, right? That's part of the clown car stuff. I guess it's like, we're just rushing to kind of meet the needs of whatever group or whatever. So, New AI capabilities for Copilot Plus PC. Copilot Actions is the name of the thing I'm referring to, by the way. Sorry, I didn't say that. These are cloud-based capabilities, but I think Microsoft 365 is going to be the bigger benefactor from this stuff, or I should say users of Microsoft 365. I'm not saying there aren't any examples. It's fun removing a background from an image in Paint or whatever. It's good. Like, it's a good capability. Like, I like it. But I think the big advances are going to come across or come through, the applications we actually use to get work done. Word, Excel, PowerPoint, whatever. So I think that's the bigger space or canvas or whatever for this stuff. So anyway, I need to digest this stuff a lot. Still more, I should say. So I suspect we'll probably talk about more of this stuff next week.
We're still very much in the announcement phase of this too. Right?
Yeah.
This is they dragging on wave 2. Like, we're still, you know what I miss at a keynote at Ignite is a, Columbia Sportswear or the case study. The company up there saying, hey, we've been using this for the past 3 months, and here's the benefits we've had. Like, it's been a while since we've seen that. And I haven't seen it at all for AI technology.
Yeah. It's an unspoken rule at any Microsoft keynote that the best part of it is some company that is not Microsoft.
Yeah.
Showing up with their own kind of unique brand of, marketing and whatever it is they do for a living. And all of a sudden, like, wow, they're really interesting. And it kind of snaps you out of this. Yeah. This boring
not
tech
them just
bubble
telling
that
you
we
a story
live.
about what you could do. Here's somebody who's been doing it.
Yeah, that's always been the case. That's why, like, when they brought out The Rock, to talk about the Xbox, or they brought out some drill sergeant one time who was awesome, or like I can't think of, I don't know clothing brands. It was like Laurent something or whatever the name of that company was really interesting. They did that NASA thing that kind of blew up in their face right before the pandemic, unfortunately. But that stuff is fascinating.
Is that Industrial Light and Magic that came up with?
Yeah, I mean, that stuff is always interesting,
Yeah,
or you could have some Microsoft guy drone on and on about nothing. I don't know. Like these are the options.
And the bigger thing to me is, what's the implication when that group is on the stage doing that? Is like, we've been using this for months, and here's our success story.
Yep.
Not, hey, they just thought of this.
Right. That's right.
And it's not even a product yet.
Yeah. This was a cool thing. It was one of the things about mixed reality that was actually pretty good. There was a good story there where they would bring in car designers and say, we get the guy making the car, instead of like having an elephant-sized lump of clay.
Yeah.
He's gonna design it with a HoloLens, and then he's gonna bring other people into the studio, and they're gonna walk around in real space, but with mixed reality headsets on, and look at it, and they could open the car door and they could look at the, how things lined up, and they could see it in 3D space. That's amazing. Now, it's a kind of a small audience, which is kind of the problem, but still, from the outside, you would look at that and be like, wow, that's awesome, and it gets your mind working a little bit, like, well, how could we apply what they did here elsewhere, or maybe to what we're doing at work or whatever.
Yep.
Interesting.
Now, show us the wins. We need some wins.
As an elephant-sized piece of clay myself,
yes,
I really understand.
There's a almond flavored candy that the kids sell on the street in Mexico, and I refer to it as the best tasting clay I've ever had. It has the consistency of the grout that you put between
is it a little gritty?
It's like what do you call it? Yeah, it's gritty, and it's literally like compressed wet sand. It's like
wow. Oh, it's halva.
Yum.
It sounds like halva.
Hold on one second. Stephanie, what's that candy called that I called clay? Marzipan, I guess. I don't know.
Marzipan. Yeah, that's almond. That's delicious.
It's almond flavored clay. I like this is the best almond flavored clay I've ever had.
Yeah, that's exactly marzipan.
Yeah, it was good.
It's there was a town in France when I was a kid that we went to that was like Marzipan City, and even the gas stations would have marzipan sculptures. Because
it sounds like the name of a place. Like I'm pretty sure it's the name of a city on the water in Mexico somewhere. Marzipan, Mexico. City. It's built on clay. It's perfect.
I love marzipan.
Yeah. Winters there are fantastic.
Yeah. All right, let's take a little break, and we shall continue. We're going to get to Windows 11. It's funny. The minute the show ended last week, Microsoft put Windows on ARM on an ISO. So, and Paul sent me a note saying it happened. So
again,
yeah. So
start recording. We can talk.
Well, let's do another show. We'll get to that in just a minute. Paul Thurrott is here. He's actually back home in Pennsylvania at thurrott.com. Also back home in Madeira Park, British Columbia, Richard Campbell. We are glad to have them both back home. Our show today brought to you by US Cloud. I had never heard of US Cloud, and I talked to these guys, and I went, wow, more people ought to know about you. They're the number one Microsoft Unified Support replacement. So, yeah, it's not really about the cloud. It's about support. But it's like Microsoft support, better, faster, and cheaper. Pretty good, right? US Cloud is the global leader in third-party Microsoft Enterprise support. They support 50 of the Fortune 500. A lot of big businesses switch to US Cloud because they can save 30 to 50% on a true comparable replacement for Microsoft Unified Support. US Cloud supports the entire Microsoft stack, 24/7, 365 days a year. They respond faster, and they resolve tickets quicker for clients all around the world. But you're always talking to real humans in the U.S., and your data stays in the U.S. And so for a lot of companies, that's very important. And the engineers are the best in the business. US Cloud really works hard to get the top. They pay them well. They give them great benefits to get the best engineers out there. So when you call, when you say, I got a problem, you're going to talk to an expert level engineer with an average of 14.9 years. That's for break fix or DSE. They're, as I said, 100% domestic, so your data never leaves the US. Oh, and here's another thing they do that I really like. I don't think Microsoft offers this: financially backed SLAs on response time. They're giving you a guarantee. Initial ticket responses average under 4 minutes. When the house is, when your network is down, your hair's on fire, you don't want to wait any longer than you have to. 4 minutes. The cavalry's on the way. In 2023, last year, they talked to their clients. 94% of US Cloud's clients said they had saved 1/3 or more when switching from Microsoft Unified Support to US Cloud. Now, when I talked to these guys, I said, that's great, but really you should focus on the fact that it's better support. It's not just less expensive. From Fortune 500 companies, large health systems, major financial institutions, and yes, federal agencies, US Cloud ensures vital Microsoft systems are working for over 6 million users globally every day. I'm talking the biggest brands. Caterpillar uses US Cloud. HP, Aflac uses US Cloud. Dun & Bradstreet, Under Armour, KeyBank, even, and this might be the best endorsement of all, even the IT folks at Gartner have chosen US Cloud for their Microsoft support needs. I saw an interview with a director of information technology with a great quote. He said, and within an hour, US Cloud responded with, I want to say, 4 engineers. So they not only did they bring the right guys to the call, but they brought the cavalry. I just felt like, wow, that was amazing. That was unlike anything I'd experienced with Microsoft in my 8 years of being with Premier. We made the right choice. You should make the right choice. Oh, and by the way, when it comes to compliance, no one gets it better than US Cloud. Their ISO, GDPR, ESG compliance. It's a strategic imperative that drives operational efficiency, legal compliance, risk management, and corporate reputation. They adhere to these standards not because they have to, because it fosters trust and loyalty among customers and stakeholders. It attracts investment and ensures long-term sustainability and success in a competitive global market. And they are succeeding. What a great company. US Cloud. Book a call today to find out how much your team can save. Oh, again with the saving. It's not just you're saving money. Better Microsoft support for less. Oh, it's faster too. uscloud.com. uscloud.com. Book a call today. Better, faster Microsoft support for less. How about that? We'll put that all together in one. uscloud.com. We thank them so much for supporting the show. You support us when, if they ask you, you say, hey, I saw it on the Windows Weekly that those guys really, they told me to call, and I did. uscloud.com. Thank you for your support, US Cloud. All right. It's time to talk about Windows.
Weird.
Yeah. Yeah. I figured we'd get to it eventually. Yeah. As Leo mentioned, I right after the show concluded last week.
Because we were saying, why isn't there an ISO for Windows
I've
on
been talking about this for months,
Yeah.
So sometime the past month or so, I think probably when 24H2 was released, they put a little note on the download page. Hey, it's coming,
We promise.
So it
That's what Aria said too on the show. It's like, don't worry, it's coming.
Yeah. It's unclear what took so long. I mean, if you go back, to the original, there's never been a downloadable ISO other than through the Insider program for Windows 10 or 11 on ARM, and there was never any for Windows RT, right? Of course, that required new hardware. Why would there be? But, this is becoming more mainstream. This is kind of necessary. There's this part of that conversation you were talking about with Aria on your show is that ARM devices have always been a little different than x86, x64 devices in the sense that I don't know what to call it. It's like the support stack for these things is more integrated. PC Maker shipped this thing that is kind of it's a thing,
Yep.
And I know it's serviced over time, but if you were to try to do a bare metal install of this, you run into these issues where you have to have all the correct drivers, and you can't go to hp.com and download ARM drivers, really, right? It's still kind of a weird problem. I think that's part of it.
Yep.
So there's a big difference.
There's also a general push by Microsoft to just build the drivers for everybody, right? Like they don't.
Yeah, right. And
it's a quality control thing.
That has factored into it as well.
Imagine you have a chance to reset this nightmare of the driver problem.
There are a variety of ways to restore or reset or whatever it is, repair a running install of Windows on a PC. And if you have an ARM-based device, especially a new Snapdragon X-based whatever, you should avail yourself of all of those things before you ever try this.
But that thing already has the driver set in it, right? Like that's the main thing.
That's the
built
point.
for your machine.
That's right. If your PC Maker offers you a recovery image of some kind that you can use to create a bootable recovery disk, which Microsoft does, by the way, for its ARM-based Surface devices, you should use that, because you could run into problems. One of the interesting things that Microsoft advises is something I've actually seen many, many times, which is you take an x64 computer of whatever kind, and you're like, I want to do a clean install of this. And by a clean install, I mean like an actual clean install. I want to make sure there's no way
bare metal
this thing phones home to HP or Lenovo, whoever it is.
Yeah.
I want Windows.
I want all my crapware gone, right? Like
and then you run the installer, and what you find is that the mouse doesn't work. So you have to use the keyboard to pad around and do that kind of thing. You can't connect to a network because
the network stack doesn't work.
Those drivers aren't there, right? So I have no problem moving around with a keyboard. I've gotten very good at the disk setup tool and setup, using it with the keyboard, right? No problem there. But I've often had to attach a USB-C to Ethernet adapter to an Ethernet cable and plug that thing into the box,
right?
To get that to work.
Or load the drive. Use another machine to load the drivers on a USB key to stick in the machine.
Now that part you can't do with ARM, but the plugging into Ethernet is Microsoft recommends it, right? If you run into this problem. So I guess here's the good news: the no caveat ways in which you can use this ISO are to install Windows 11 on ARM in a VM, which you can only do on an ARM-based PC, right? Mm-hmm. And if you have a Mac, and Leo brought this up last week when you were gone, but you have, for some reason, you're stuck on 23H2 using Parallels or whatever, typically Parallels, but also other, Fusion, whatever you might be using. Mm-hmm. Download the ISO and just run setup from there and just do an upgrade. Get 24H2. You don't have to worry about the drivers because it's,
because I am on 22H2 as we talked there.
Just use the straight up ISO.
Okay.
There is no media creation tool for Microsoft that works with the Windows 11 on ARM. There's no installation assistant.
You can't make a USB key.
I mean, yeah.
Could you use Rufus or something to do it?
Does Rufus support it? I haven't tried that yet, so I just got home. So I that's one of the things I'm going to look at.
I'll try it.
When you use Microsoft's downloadable Surface, what's the term? I guess restore image, whatever they call it. You actually use the restore. I'm using the wrong terms here. I'm sorry. The recovery drive. There's a recovery drive wizard that creates a recovery USB drive right in Windows. You can use that, and then you overwrite with the Surface specific stuff. Boot with that thing. It has the drivers, et cetera, et cetera. So that's actually the better option for that kind of computer. Yeah, I mean, could you create like a raw? I think you could, right? It's just an ISO. I mean, I don't see any reason why you couldn't. I haven't tried it, so that's one thing I haven't tried, but I don't see any reason why you couldn't. You could use this on an older pre-Snapdragon X or Snapdragon Elite, whatever the actual name of that thing is, PC to just kind of upgrade in place if you're not getting the upgrade through Windows Update. Like that should work. You don't have to worry about drivers in that case. But as a kind of pure restoration kind of utility, it's not quite there, in the sense that it won't work for everyone. And it's not the type of thing you want to take the chance on. Like, we'll see what happens. Like, no, because if you screw this thing up, you're going to have to go back to the PC maker and say, hey, could you fix this for me? You don't want to be careful with it. But if you have a Windows 11 on ARM device and want to run Hyper-V and put a VM in there, this will work for that. If you have, like I said, Parallels on a Mac, no problem. It's better than using that UUP dump site because it's official. It is from Microsoft, but it may not have all the drivers. You have to get online. If you can get online with the Ethernet cable, then you can go into Windows Update, and that should get you the drivers you need, right? That's how that works. So that's true on x64 as well. But at least it's here. It's I don't mean to say there are caveats, but there's just more to know. That's all.
Yeah.
Just be smart about it and know all the options you have. If you are actually having issues, there are existing options everyone knows about, their Windows recovery environment, the reset this PC functionality. But there's also new stuff. I think it's new to 24H2. There, if you go into the recovery options and settings, there's an option called Fix Problems with the Windows Update, and it actually reinstalls Windows without impacting your apps, your files, or your settings.
Right.
And that's true of apps you've downloaded from the web. That's the first time they've offered something like that, right? A lot of their restore tools in the past were like, well, we'll keep the store apps, but you're going to have to go reinstall Chrome and Office and all this stuff. This actually keeps that. So you just, if you're doing this for restore reasons, just avail yourself of the other tools first. This should be a last ditch answer. Like, don't say like, I have a new whatever, Copilot Plus PC, Snapdragon. I just want to have a really clean install. So I'm going to I'd be careful with that. I just uninstall the things you don't want instead. That's a better approach, but at least it's there. So,
yeah. Now I did find some blog posts from folks who figured out you can use Rufus.
You can. Okay.
Build up set. But the main thing they said was because all drivers are slipstream, you need, the smart thing to do is to take the WOA drivers and put them on the USB key with
how do they get them though? Like get them out of the computer itself? Like
no, they're talking about the generalized WOAs from Microsoft. There are sets of
Oh, okay, like the class drivers or whatever.
Yeah,
okay.
So you take all of them, you put them on the USB key as well.
See, why aren't those on there?
They should be.
Is the thing I would ask.
ISO, but they're not, right?
Yeah.
And so if you add those, then it will, as it's setting up, find them and slipstream them in.
I'm trying to remember where I saw this. So
and that is an ARM UEFI boot. So that's
okay. That's good. I mean, that's good. So I don't remember.
Your mileage will vary, right? Good luck.
I'm trying to remember why I ran into this. I don't remember, but one of the issues I've kind of questioned in the past about Copilot Plus PCs on Snapdragon is they ship with 20 something LLM or SLMs, right? On the disk. So I was always curious, when they make this ISO available, is it going to be 10 gigabytes or 20 gigabytes? It's not. It's just a 5.1, normal size. And that means that those things will have to download as you need them. And I actually saw this one time, and this is what I can't remember where I saw this, but imagine you are running a Copilot Plus PC. Maybe you just did the clean install with this thing. And you go into Paint and you use the image, what's the one that's only on Copilot Plus, whatever the feature, it doesn't matter. Use some feature in Paint or Photos or whatever that's unique to Copilot Plus PC. So the feature shows up and you click on it and it says, you don't have the LLM you need for this. And it actually downloads it then.
Right.
So this thing, I don't know if there's some facility in the system where it will do this automatically in the background if you're not doing anything, but I do know, and I can't remember how I ran into this, but if you run into an on-demand or you run into a feature that needs an LLM or an SLM and it's not on the disk, it will download it. It will actually tell you, like, give us a minute. We have to download this thing. So that's how they're doing it. I think it's the answer to that.
And it's just that you need the basics. Like the default ARM configuration doesn't even have a display driver. It has no network driver. It doesn't even have a keyboard driver.
Yeah.
So you can install it, but then you can do nothing.
Then you can't do nothing. Yeah.
You can do nothing.
Right. Which is, by the way, was what you did with Windows RT. So it's like going back in time.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the reality, of course, when you're an OEM who builds your own machines is like this is the base install of Windows. It comes with nothing. And then you actually build out your driver set for your machine.
The thing that, right.
Like,
so
I don't know why they would have shipped it like this. Like it
right. The reason this is confusing is that the base configuration in Windows and ARM with Snapdragon X is virtually identical for all of these computers. Now, they all have their own things for sure. I mean, I don't mean to downplay that, but one of the things that's astonishing about these computers is how the same they all are, right?
Right.
So it seems like I'll just call it class driver because I'm not really sure how they do it on ARM, but like the class driver for the keyboard, the trackpad, the screen, the whatever. The networking would be the biggest one, really. I mean, not the biggest one, but one of the top, 5 or 8. Why aren't those in there? Like, I don't understand that. Like,
the thing that absolutely everybody would need. Yeah,
that surprises me. So maybe this evolves over time. There are reasons, no, for sure, but they're quiet about it. They never even announced that they did it. They just put it up one day, So whatever. It's better than nothing, for sure. It's certainly better. I mean, my God, we've been waiting for this for years. So it's good that they did this.
So where did they put it? I'm looking and I don't see it.
So if you Google download Windows 11.
Yeah. I mean, I've got the Windows 11 download page.
Yep. Yeah. So there are 3 or 4, scroll down.
Yeah.
Go down.
This is and now, ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for. Paul.
No,
teaches me how to use a computer.
No, this will be quick.
Okay.
There you go, right there. So it says download Windows 11 disk image ISO.
Yeah.
There's a bold link. It says Windows 11 ISOs for ARM64 devices are here. It's in the next section down.
Right? Yes. Available here. There's a link.
So there's a 4-letter link in that page.
It says here.
You didn't see it. I'm surprised you didn't see it.
No, and then it has all that stuff before, but I'm not going to worry about that. So, all right. And what the nice thing about Parallels is I don't need it on a USB key. I can do it from the
That's right.
ISO,
You just run it right up there. You just mount it and run setup.
Yep.
So you just have to choose the language. You're good. Yeah, you'll get it.
Very nice.
Okay. And actually, since we did, let me skip ahead just for a second because this is ARM related and I don't know why I didn't put these next to each other. Google some months ago announced they would bring Google Drive to Windows 11 on ARM, and now they have. So it's in beta. I just put it on my Surface laptop. I think it was the morning I flew home, actually. So it would have been yesterday. It feels like a million years ago, but assuming I'll use it for, some number of days, but I had switched temporarily back to OneDrive because this was not available. Assuming all goes well so far, it's been great. I'll go back to Google Drive because it's better. But I've been waiting. This is my only significant. Actually, I think it's my only software incompatibility issue with Windows 11 on ARM to date. So, problem solved. So that's good.
Nice.
Okay. The big message for Windows at Ignite is not these new Copilot features. It's not, whatever. It's security, because I don't know if you got the memo on this, but security is job one at Microsoft now. And it's the priority. It's weird because they really push the AI thing. You would think it might be AI, but it's not. It's security. And they were talking
really security around the cloud. Like, I don't see a lot of conversation about security in Windows. There's
a whole thing. And so you're familiar with the Secure Future Initiative?
Yes.
They have one just for Windows now. They announced this because, of course. So I wrote this in the notes. I wrote this in my article, but I want everyone listening or watching this podcast, I want you to close your eyes for a second and just think, when I say the words Microsoft Windows to you, what are the first things that come to mind? Now, it's going to be a range. Some of it's going to be unprintable, but I'm guessing that what no one thought of was security or resiliency or anything like that. I'm guessing no one thought that, which is interesting because that's what Microsoft seems to think is top of mind for most people that use Windows. I think Windows is the result of a lot of inertia, especially with businesses. But to be fair to them, like I said, I think I said this up front in the show. Yeah, I did. there are two halves to the equation when it comes to Windows. There's no there's no singular team really, right? There's the architecture side, which is in Azure, and then there's the clown cars, I call it, the stuff that they throw features out like like an ape throwing its feces at people at the zoo. So the security side's actually, it's pretty solid, right? And there's a bunch of stuff in Windows 11 now, and there's a bunch of stuff coming that is actually really exciting. And one of the things I've talked about a bunch, and I really think people don't understand this, is the Windows Hello ESS stuff that's in the Copilot Plus PCs. So we talk about how they raised the bar on the system requirements, but they also raised the bar on the security requirements to a degree that is actually kind of off the charts. And this will become the baseline for Windows security going forward for all computers, right? It takes time. You have to transition the whole customer base over to these newer computers that have this kind of stuff. But it is an exciting change. And for businesses, they've announced a bunch of specific features that I think most people don't know about. Some are new, so that explains that. But I mean, some of them have been around for a while, like Windows Hello ESS, which I think PC makers had never really rolled out because it's super expensive. Customers didn't understand it. No one was really asking for it. It's a very stringent set of requirements, but now this is getting added into the mix. I went back and looked this up. I had this vague idea that this might be true, but Microsoft announced their Secure Future Initiative, the new version of trustworthy computing, late last year. 2 weeks later, Russian hackers broke into their infrastructure and started a 2-month-long escapade that they still to this day have not fully admitted to, Microsoft. And so May came and Build, and they were like, all right, we're going to re-announce this like we never did it in the first place because, people probably don't think we're serious about it. So they sort of pretended they were saying it for the first time. And then 2 months later, a month and a half later, CrowdStrike happened, right? So now it's November again, and we're like, all right, so listen, we're really serious about security. So, we're doing this again. And it is worth looking at the stuff that they're doing to secure Windows. There's some very interesting things coming on. I'm super curious, both you, Leo, and Richard, what you think about this one, because this blows my mind. I saw that in Windows 24 H2 that Microsoft was enabling. They call it BitLocker sometimes. Sometimes they call it or they just call it device encryption. It's because the branding on it's different depending on what kind of version of Windows you have. It's just full disk encryption is what it is. But whatever. They said they're enabling it by default on all computers, all PCs. And I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of interesting. Since given that you've been doing that for like 5 or 7 years already, what does that mean, right? And so in later versions of Windows 10 and Windows 11, they enable disk device encryption or BitLocker when you sign into a Microsoft account or to a Microsoft work or school account. And the reason they do it then is because when you do that, they can save the recovery key up to your OneDrive, right? Right. If you have Windows 11 Pro or better, you can go into the BitLocker control panel and you can enable it manually if you sign in with like a local account, right? So you can do that. But you have to save the recovery key first. You can't save it to the disk you're encrypting, right? It has to go somewhere else. But once you save it, they will let you then encrypt the disk. So I was like, well, how would they possibly enable it automatically in all computers? Because they still allow people to sign in with these older account types. And the answer is they don't. So I don't know what they were talking about. Like it can't be activated until you back up that recovery key. So I wasn't sure what that meant, but in a coming version of Windows, first for businesses that are using Enterprise Edition, they're going to enable, this blows my mind, a folder-based encryption capability that, sorry, it's tied to folder backup in some way. So it's like desktop documents, pictures folders by default, but I guess you can add other folders. I'm like, okay. And you have to sign in with Windows Hello or authenticate with Windows Hello to get into those folders as an admin. Interesting. But the disk is already encrypted. I'm curious. What is this? They literally refer to it as double encryption.
Okay.
And that reads
better.
Like a joke.
It's twice as good.
It's twice as good.
It's like double secret probation, only different.
Exactly.
I often this is the type of joke I make. I'll say something like my password is 1234, but I'm going to make it 1, 2, 3, 4 because now it's 64-bit. So it's way more secure. It's a joke, right? It's stupid.
Yeah.
That's what this reads like. It's not a joke. They're actually doing this. They call it double encryption. Okay. I guess.
It helps how?
It's because it's 2 encryptions. Come on, man. It's twice as good.
Because more encryption's
It
better.
might be exponentially as good. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, Hot Patch is great. This is the ability to install security patches without requiring a reboot.
How many times have we heard that one?
Exactly. There's stuff like that. There's a feature that's been in Windows 11 for a couple of years now called Smart App Control. So if you're running Windows 11, you can go look for it. It's hilarious. Run Windows Security. I'm actually going to do it on this computer. I'm curious what it says because I think I already know what it's going to say. But Windows Security, and then you go to App and Browser Control, and it will say Smart App Control. It's one of the things. So you go into Settings, and on most people's computers by this point, it will be all grayed out and it's off. That's how it works. And there's nothing you can do to turn this on. So when you get a new computer or you reset a computer, Windows App Control or Smart App Control goes into evaluation mode. And it will sit there and learn about the apps you use. And if it can be turned on, it will actually automatically turn itself on. Which, by the way, I've never seen, not once. So I don't know what to tell you. But you can turn it on manually if you do it quick. It has to be within the first week or so of using a new computer. Once you turn it on, it uses AI to evaluate the behavior of apps that you've just installed. And if it sees weird behavior, it will actually prevent you from running that app. Mm-hmm. When it does that, you will, of course, turn it off. And when you do, you can never re-enable it. Now, technically, you can re-enable it if you know the registry things to change, but there's no UI for re-enabling it. And so for businesses, they're adding I think it's just called App Control for Business probably or something. They're adding a policy-based way for IT admins to force that on users, essentially, right?
So it should just be group policy. But.
It should just, yeah. So I was told earlier this year that this was going to be enabled by default. So it would not be in evaluation mode, but it would just be on in default in 24H2. It's not. So this is one of those things I've looked at a bunch and it's not. The behavior's not changed, but it is something that's been in Windows 11, I want to say for at least 2 years. It's kind of experimental in a sense. And it literally is an evaluation mode by default. But if you're
so it's just like in Canary, like where is it?
No, it's in stable. You can do it right now.
It's in stable. It's just off
So
by
if you
default.
if you run Windows Security, the app, it's like a dashboard, and then go to I think it's called App. I just did it. I'm sorry, I just lost it. App and Browser Control, I think. Yeah, App and Browser Control, and then the first link in there is Smart App Control. And if you go into Settings, like I said, if you've been running Windows 11 for a while, this thing's off, and there's nothing you can do.
Right.
But if you've reinstalled Windows or new computer, you can actually enable it's in evaluation mode by default, but you can enable it. And it will protect you against, untrusted apps and drivers, I guess is the way to kind of put it.
How do they assess untrusted?
AI. So
if you trust that.
I don't even know why you're questioning this.
This AI
weird. It's weird to me you would even ask that question. I mean, my experience with this so far is that I've never found a good way to demo it. I've never found a good example of something I could definitely run where it would be like, oh yeah, no, this is not good. And then it just kind of, I enable it and I never have any problems, right? But if you run into a problem, you can turn it off. But I do know if you do turn it off, you can never turn it back on, not using the standard UI.
I love that.
Yeah, it's good stuff. There is a new modern version of Windows Hello from a user experience that's coming where they explicitly mentioned the passkey stuff they've been using under the covers for the past year or so. Yeah, about a year, which is cool, right? And so sometime in the past month, Microsoft talked about how they're expanding passkey support in Windows. It's going to get nice. So that stuff's cool. Like that's happening or will be happening soon. That's cool. I'm trying to think here's the big one, actually. This is the big one. So starting with Windows XP, to my memory, Microsoft simplified the types of user types you could have, it's really it's permission types really, but there are administrator users and standard users, right? We've had this since Windows XP, and rather than having different more granular control over that kind of stuff. So administrator, standard user. It's sort of like Windows SKUs. Like that was the same time where they introduced the home SKU right to the NT product line. So we had home and professional, And so, Microsoft kind of sits back and they look at all the features and they're like, all right, this one's going to be in home and also pro. This one's only going to be in pro, right? Like you make these kind of decisions. And so they made the same decisions with permissions, right? Like administrator class users will be able to do certain things that standard users can't, right? And so the way Windows has worked ever since is that if you need to, as a standard user, do something you can't do, you could escalate and you would send a notification to an administrator class user who could approve it for you. Or if you knew the administrator class user's username and password, you could enter that information then and, bypass the block and go do it. So this system's not great. Fair enough. So I don't know if let me think about this. Is this Windows? I think this is straight across Windows. So it's probably Windows Pro and Enterprise. But in the managed versions of Windows, they're going to allow you to authenticate against Windows Hello to allow things to happen as an administrator. So in other words, we're recognizing that most people set up a computer and they're administrators, right? But they're going to run as a standard user most of the time. And when they need to do something, some action, some task, whatever it is, that requires administrative privileges, they're going to have a temporary administrator token created that occurs when they authenticate with Windows Hello. So hopefully it's facial recognition or a thumbprint. It could be a PIN. And then as soon as that thing's done, boop, you're back to standard user.
I mean, the thing that Linux has done for forever.
You know what? I feel like Microsoft invented this, and I don't know why you have
anybody would talk any other way. Yes.
So I'm sure that it's a good idea wherever it came from. If that is how, that sounds right. Like it's like a visual, like a GUI version of sudo, I guess maybe is the way to think of it. Windows Hello based sudo. Yeah. So it's a good idea. I mean, for sure.
But just getting people to not operate routinely with admin privileges.
This has been the dream. Forever, right? I mean, it's like
I dealt with one shop where they had a script for every admin account where the moment you were running an admin account, there was a red flashing light.
Oh boy.
Right. It's just like, it's only when you went down to a domain account that you didn't have that problem. Although now folks complain about the power of domain accounts, but
Yeah, right. People who care about security have tried this, right? You're out there. You're going to hear this go, yep, I did this. You create an administrative class accounts because you have to. The first one you sign into with the computer is an administrator. And then you're like, all right, but that's just there for me to approve things. So now I'm going to create a standard user account that I'm going to use. Yeah. And I'm going to, every time something happens, I'll just enter the authenticate, whatever I need to authenticate against the administrative account. Yeah. And then you use that for about 15 seconds and you're like, no, screw this. This is a pain in the ass. Yeah. It's like, it's horrible. So no one does it. And so this is their 25 years later, like, all right, maybe we solve this. Maybe this is it. It sounds like this sounds good to me. A lot of the security stuff they're doing in Windows 11 right now is relying on this Windows Hello based authentication. Yeah. And I think it's smart. I think that's a good idea. So.
Yeah. Anyway. Well, and it's just, it's partly to do with Windows. Like the login process has such an extensive impact that the only really way to do it had been to log all the way out to log back in. There was a UAC escalation, but that's only if you trigger UAC. So it only works in certain circumstances where you can temporarily use an admin privilege to apply the UAC constraint.
UAC, I think I was wrong about this, but I always compared UAC to that third brake light they added to cars in 1986 or whatever year. I remember they did that, and I okay, why are we adding an extra brake light? And it's like, well, people will notice this and they'll see the brake lights better, Right. I'm like, yeah, then they'll just get used to it and they'll ignore it, and I actually seem like
ignore.
But the third brake light has persisted, so maybe it works. I don't know.
Well, once you put a rule in place.
Do you see this? A 24H2 is installing.
Oh, good things are coming your way.
It's so exciting.
I can't wait till he loses his keyboard and mouse capabilities. But it's going to be fun.
The good news is the emulator handles all of that. This is
of course.
I don't have to worry about that.
Anyway, I feel like people don't pay attention to UAC anymore. I think that's part of the problem, right? For I don't think most people do what I do, but I know that if you hit tab 3 times and hit enter, it gets rid of it.
Don't tell people that.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm like tab, 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 enter. Like that's what I do.
Doesn't it sometimes ask for your password?
No. Oh, UAC. No, it will. So actually, this just came up when Richard was gone. Yeah. So in the Insider program somewhere, they're updating UAC to, I think, avoid the thing I just described.
Right.
Similarly to like a 2FA app, like sometimes it will give you a number, sometimes it will give the number on the other side. Sometimes you have to, it does something a little different.
Authenticator is playing that game
because they're trying to get rid of the, the thing I do.
The pattern.
Yeah. So they're
tap, enter.
They're doing that with.
No, I love the way Authenticator says, look at the requester for the number.
That's right.
Look at me for the number.
It keeps you on your
type the
toes.
number in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like
pay
that
attention.
actually.
Yeah.
Were you being sarcastic or do you actually appreciate it?
No, I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, I
because
think
it
that's-
makes you
yeah.
think.
All
No,
it
I think
needs-
it's
all it
smart.
needs, just a little extra nudge.
It's different every time. That's
It's
so
the
smart.
third brake light.
But
Yeah.
it also,
But
I've
the
also
brake
talked
light's
to
in a
the
different place
administrator.
It's the
every time,
fourth
right?
brake light.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the fourth brake light.
I've talked to an administrator who was
It's
talking
64-bit
to a
brake
user
light.
whose account was under attack. And
Yep.
while the account was under attack, the guy approved an authentication. That wasn't him. Like while he was on the phone.
Because you're like, stop.
'Cause
like,
he always
this
approves it,
freaking thing is always asking me stuff. Like, this is not good.
And the whole thing with the authenticator numbers is you have to be both sides because you need to be able to see the number.
Right. So,
Now, right.
Well, yeah,
I
the
remember
tip of the
on
wing
the
is how
phone,
to
he's like, I
bypass
can't believe he just
UAC.
did that. It was right in front of me, like while I was there.
that's what it's like being a human being. You're
That's
flawed.
what a
That's why
human does.
AI is going to take us out. I
That's
can't
what a
wait.
human
It's only a matter of time.
The AI
I
will
have
win
it
if it
now.
presents
I
a
have
wizard
it.
where you can go next, done.
And you're like, hey, Copilot, how do I just get rid of UAC prompts altogether? Is that a thing? Could I do that?
Would you like the end of civilization wizard? I can do that. next, done.
You have to, but you can do it. But there's a UAC prompt.
Yeah.
I'm just, so
I'm just going to have to hit OK.
just authenticate with Windows Hello, and we're good. There's been a bunch of stuff through the Windows Insider program since we last spoke, including one that just happened today. Most of it is not particularly interesting. They're getting rid of the beta channel for Windows 10, which is hilarious because they just started it up again, I think, in June. But whatever, who cares?
Windows 10 was over.
Well, I guess it is again. So there's a bunch of I don't even care about most of this stuff, honestly. But the big one, the one that people are going to want to pay attention to, came out last week, I think after the show.
As always.
Last week's show, which is a new release preview channel build of Windows 11, which has a lot of additional things, which means it's almost certainly coming out on Patch Tuesday in December. So if you look at this list, you get an idea that this was supposed to be 24H4 and they didn't quite make the final cut, right, for the initial release. Mm-hmm. It includes some things we've seen before, like the Android sharing capabilities from File Explorer and on the desktop. There's like that start menu thing where if you have your Android set up in Phone Link, it pops up in a weird little regurgitated side panel thing. System tray updates where it's like the shortened form of the clock now, right? Which they showed like 6 months ago, jump lists in the start menu. It's a bunch of like little things, like just a bunch of them. But so that I think this to me is like, okay, this is what we really wanted to do for 24H2. So that I'm guessing here kind of, but I think this is going to be,
Did they stop going at 24H2 at some point? Can it be 25H1? Can't it?
so,
crazy?
all right. I'm fascinated you just said that because this is not in the notes, but
It's November.
a couple of weeks ago, Google announced that they were going to change the schedule for Android, right?
Right.
They've always released toward the end of the year. Mm-hmm. They kind of finalize it in August usually, and then it goes out on new devices like later in the year. Now, for them, what that meant was typically in October, they would release new Pixel devices and it would have that version of Android. They would usually be the first ones, right? And then it would go out to others. Samsung would follow in January, whatever. They claim because of their third-party OEMs, which I read as because Samsung, the only one that matters, that they want to change the schedule so that they release this thing by the middle of the year, so in the second quarter. And so Android 16 is going to have this shortened schedule where all the behavior changes that you see in the UI will occur in probably, May or June, something like that. Android 16 will come out. And they said they're doing it because of these partners, right? Samsung, who increasingly is releasing their best and most important products in August, right? Which is the folding devices.
Right.
This past year, actually last year, and then again this year, they tried to move this timeline up, they tried to ship it early. They missed last year. They missed this year by 2 months. They didn't even come close. So they announced new Pixels in August. They did all their Pixels in August, just like Samsung does for folding phones.
Yeah.
With last year's Android.
Yeah.
Nice. So if you thought Microsoft was stupid, they're right there. But now they've started up this thing. So I think, honestly, I look at this and I think, yeah, this is the right time to do it. You want to hit the end of the year stuff. You want to hit back to school. You want to hit holiday, whatever. Why wouldn't Microsoft do the same thing, right? They sort of half did it last year. They released 24H2 first for Snapdragon right in June.
Right.
But then they waited until November or October, sorry. And now I guess sort of December for the full version.
Well, we're still
why not
playing
do
with that
that?
idea that there's a 6-month exclusivity and we don't really know when it ends.
Yeah, I don't want to give them ideas. I definitely don't want to go back to our system where they do 2 major releases every year. But
Right.
I actually do think that the second quarter of the year is the better time for that major release. I think that is the better time. I don't know. So interesting you just said that, because that, to me, like, why not have a 25H1?
Why not? Right.
And then go to
again,
26H1. Like, skip the H2. Forget H2. Who cares about H2?
Do it in the first half of the year.
Yep.
In which case, you're already late. It's November. H1 is upon us.
Yes. Anyway, that would be my recommendation.
I just really never want to say 24H2 ever again. That's what I'm looking forward to.
24H2 has, I don't remember if you missed this or not, but has been easily the buggiest, most unreliable version they've ever released.
I just installed it. Knock that off.
No, but they have cute icons in the context menu. It's nice.
Remember when it said, great things are in waiting for you? It's
I believed it. See, I'm on 24H2.
Yeah, there you go.
That was the ISO I downloaded.
I think, let's see, let me look. I'm going to look at mine. I think you're on the, I actually have a newer, but you might, so you should go to Windows Update, but you have a newer.
Oh, yeah, I haven't done update
I bet you
yet.
have the monthly updates.
Yeah.
Because you updated, now you'll need to update.
Yeah, that's right. You might want to just join the Insider program, Leo.
No, I've learned my lesson.
And then just real quick, this is just semi-related because earnings never end. Lenovo, the world's biggest maker of computers, had significant double-digit gains, profit, and revenue year over year.
Wow.
Oddly, not from PCs necessarily. Like, their revenues from PC sales only went up 3% year over year. However, they did predict that for full year 2025, which for them is, when is their fiscal year? I can't remember exactly. It might be we might be in the first quarter now. Will be significantly better PC sales. So they've actually upped their prediction for PC revenue growth for the coming year. So I think it was 5 to 10%. Now it's 10 to 15%. So they're talking like we pretty much guarantee it's going to be double-digit PC growth in the coming year, which is kind of amazing. And they credit 2 things for that: AI PCs, because they kind of have to, but also that Windows 11 replacement cycle, which you've been talking about for years, but has to happen eventually. And with Windows 10 exiting mainstream support, not mainstream support, just support, I guess, unless you pay for the extended support stuff in October next year, probably will start happening, I guess.
So it wasn't the PCs that gave them double-digit growth. What was it?
Yeah. It wasn't cars. It wasn't IoT. It wasn't smart devices. No, it was a data center.
Okay.
Yeah. So everyone, even companies that are just not big players in this market, like AMD kind of falls in this category in an even bigger way, even though they're nothing really. A lot of their growth is coming from that part of the business. Lenovo has been trying to diversify beyond the PC for a long, long time. And they obviously have a phone business, et cetera. But you were gone for this, but AMD announced layoffs, and they're actually laying off people in their PC and gaming divisions to focus on AI in the data center, which they see as a major growth area for them. They are not 5. That's not fair. I was going to say 5%, but it's I can't remember how small they are compared revenue wise to NVIDIA, but it's somewhere in that area. It's very small compared to NVIDIA, but for them, the PC has a very definitive, size to it. It's not like if they go gangbusters, they're not going to be a much bigger company than they are now. But if they can make some growth happen in the data center with AI, that's a huge growth potential. So, yeah.
All right.
Lenovo never broke up like HP did, right? So they still have
No.
both sides of that kind of fence. Like I think Dell does as well.
Okie dokie. Maybe we do a little breaky wakey here. And then I know you want more AI, so you're going to get more AI.
Yeah, we're going to smack it with it. Yep.
You've been asking for it. Now you're going to get it. Paul Thurrott, Richard Campbell, you are listening, dear Winder and Dozer. Winner and Dozers to Windows Weekly. This show brought to you today, as it always has been, literally by CacheFly. How many times have you heard me say it? Bandwidth for Windows Weekly is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com/twit. Actually, in the early days of the show, Paul remembers this, back when we were in audio, it was like brought to you by AOL Radio for a while and brought to you by BitTorrent for a while. We were suffering, to be honest. We just didn't have the bandwidth to give you the shows you want. And when we moved to video, it was even worse. Fortunately, CacheFly to the rescue. For over 20 years, CacheFly has held a track record for high-performing, ultra-reliable content delivery, serving over 5,000 companies in over 80 countries. And now, CacheFly is better prepared for the holidays. Yes, CacheFly gets ready for the holidays. Better prepared than ever before. CacheFly is the only CDN built for throughput. Ultra low latency video streaming, delivering video with less than a second latency to over 1 million concurrent users. Lightning fast gaming delivers downloads faster. And as you're playing with zero lag, zero glitches, zero outages. If you've got a site or anywhere with images on it, you'll love CacheFly's mobile content optimization, which gives you automatic and simple image optimization, just like that. So your site loads faster and looks better no matter what size screen you're on. The thing we really appreciate about CacheFly, we didn't know at the time, bandwidth was very spiky. We didn't want to pay for like the maximum bandwidth we'd ever use. It went up and down. Some days there was hardly any. So they offered us flexible month-to-month billing so we could figure that out as long as we needed. And they'll offer that to you too, by the way. Plus, once you understand, what your needs are, you can get discounts for fixed terms. The point was for us and for you too, design your contract when you switch. They're very flexible. A couple of big announcements they wanted me to talk about. Managed object storage. CacheFly is a new object storage solution designed to increase speed and reliability to industry-leading levels. The hardware, get this is so cool, is entirely based on NVMe, so it's going to be better suited to users with large numbers of small objects. It's completely S3 compatible, of course, and it will easily integrate into your CacheFly MOS, into S3, or any other tool set you've designed. And here's the best part. There are no egress or ingress costs. Zero egress or ingress costs, just a flat volume fee. And they've just added a new pop in Austria's capital city, Vienna. So let's all go have some soccer tort. Central Europe will see significant improvements in latency and average transfer speed. That's one of the things CacheFly does so well. By putting a server closer to you, closer to your customers, for us, it means no matter where in the world you're downloading our shows, you're downloading from a server that's nearby, so it's fast. They've also added some new reseller features to the portal. You can now be classified as a reseller and have numerous full accounts under your reseller account. This is great for MSPs, each of which can operate independently, but the billing is all centralized. CacheFly, we love CacheFly. Rich media content up to 158% faster than other major CDNs. And you can do something I think must have been an early beta of this because we've been doing this for a long time. You can shield your site content in the cloud. We upload to CacheFly, so there's 100% cache hit ratio. There's no cache misses. I love that feature. They call it SOS. You might want to try that. CacheFly's elite managed packages give you the VIP treatment. I know we've always gotten great treatment from our dedicated account manager. He or she will be with you from day one, ensuring a smooth implementation and reliable 24/7 support when you need it. Look. You owe it to yourself. Learn how you can get your first month free at cachefly.com/twit. You need me to spell it for you? That's CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com/twit. Thank you, Cashfly. Thank you for all you've done for us over. How long has it been, Lisa? It's been 15 years, something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a long time. Back we go to the now refreshed Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell.
Do we have an audio only live stream of this show?
Actually, Lisa, since our CEO
I asked,
is here,
someone asked on Twitter. I'm not asking.
We want this. We used to be on TuneIn.
Yeah.
And because we now stream on 8 different platforms, we've been constrained. One of the platforms could be the audio stream, but we wanted to get it to YouTube and Twitch and Discord and TikTok and LinkedIn and Facebook and X and Kick. That's 8. And so I don't.
I mean, you could listen to the audio,
No, but people want. I know what they want. We used to have you could just have an audio stream, a live audio stream. It was at twit.am. Check if it's there or not. I think we're working on getting it back. I want to have it back. But remember, the thing that has changed, we used to do 24/7 streaming, right? So when we would do reruns and stuff, we don't do that anymore. So it won't be that you just turn it on and leave it on all day and all night, as much as you might want Paul Thurrott's
I like to sleep to
tones.
it. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I think twit.am might still work. If it doesn't, Russell's working on that. We're going to, so I apologize. I know it's been down since the studio closed.
It's not something I've thought about.
Well, I'm glad you asked, because actually I've been getting some email from people, and I do want to tell people that. Yeah. Also, I should mention we're working on a best of for this show, as long as we're talking business. So if you have some ideas of moments of great rage on Paul's part, or a comment that you enjoyed or whatever, we're looking for those clips. Anything that happened in the year 2024, go to twit.tv/best of. The more information you give us, the easier it will be for our editors. But anything that you remember that you'd like to see in the end of year best of, which is coming up in not too long, believe it or not. About a month. Yeah. All right, now back to the AI and antitrust and more, the section you've all been waiting for.
There's actually no AI in here that I can think of. Well, I guess it factors into this a little bit. So according to a report in Bloomberg, the DOJ and the states that are arrayed against Google in its losing search antitrust case in the United States are going to recommend, or have recommended to the judge, because he gave them various choices, that Google sell off Chrome as part of its remedy. There's a lot more to this. They looked at selling off Android. They looked at selling off the advertising business. They are apparently also going to require them to make various changes to Android and the App Store, et cetera, et cetera. But the big one, of course, is this Chrome thing. And the reaction to this has been entertaining to me. I'm not 100% sure personally this is right, the right thing to do, or whatever.
Does it generate any revenue? How do you make a business out of a product you give away?
Well, because it's the distribution vehicle.
I don't disagree. Yeah.
Still, that's the theory. Yeah. No, I know. I don't know. It's hard not to look back at the Microsoft thing. Remember when Microsoft was found guilty of antitrust violations late
in
90s,
November
early 2000s.
Of 99.
Yeah, they were going to separate Microsoft into the OS company and the application company. That was And this is not as dramatic as that.
No.
But it's still, it's kind of
interesting. No, it sounds like table stakes in a consent decree negotiation.
Yeah, yeah. I think one thing we can 100% guarantee is there will be no more of these special deals, right? So the 20 whatever billion that they pay Apple every year going away.
Yeah.
The thing that keeps Mozilla in business going away. Sorry, over. Mozilla.
Well, you do have a new administration too, so it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. Although the new administration hates Google, so
I was going to say that
doesn't improve.
No one seems to remember this, and I'm going to include myself in this list. This lawsuit was actually brought under the Trump administration. So so actually,
and it's still been running through.
But that's the point. It's been going on so long.
The Biden administration continued it, and then. Yeah, government moves
it's
slowly,
years off, whatever remedy. What do you think is selling Chrome though? I mean, I don't even know how you sell Chrome. It's an open source project.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Like, how much could this? I think the three of us could afford to buy Chrome. What is Chrome is a standalone business? Like,
some
what is
analysts said it was worth like $20 billion.
Please.
Yeah. For what? How are you?
I was told the super site for Windows was worth $1 million when I tried to take it back. yeah, sure it is. But
who would buy it and why would they buy
what
it?
man would
It'd
want
have
her
to be
now?
Microsoft.
No, it's just yeah.
It would be
but
Microsoft.
Microsoft. There's no way Microsoft could.
No,
Microsoft would
it
be
with a
prevented.
10-foot
There's
pole.
no way.
Yeah,
no way. I honestly think the one company that makes sense here is
Oracle.
Mozilla.
Oh, Mozilla. No, they don't have the
Well,
money.
no, I'm trying to say in the industry. It will be some horrible Salesforce,
It'll be Oracle or Salesforce.
IBM.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Amazon.
But
It won't
Amazon,
even happen.
there you
This
go.
isn't going to happen. Do you
no,
think it's
this,
going to
like I
happen?
said, I think this is table stakes in a consent decree negotiation.
I think what happens is some form of behavioral change where they can no longer tie their.
You say there'll be
dominance to these products.
spankings.
Spankings. There will be. Do not make you go in a timeout.
yeah,
I will do it. I'm going to Blair Witch you. Get up
There are
against the
no
wall.
safe words here.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have an
It's
opinion
hard
about
to
this one.
understand how it would even work because Chrome is based on an open source project called Chromium, which admittedly is mostly Google employees, but it is not owned by Google.
Microsoft
No, but that's
uses
the-
Chromium for Edge.
Right.
It's roughly comparable
Brave.
to Android when you think about it, right?
Yeah.
So Android AOSP. But the thing that people want is what we call Android, and that's the Google Play, Google Maps, Gmail, and you pay for that, right? And so that's obviously not true of Chrome, but Chrome, Google makes money through their advertising engine, right? And by the way, all the built-in tracking, right? And so when Microsoft made Edge, the big promise was we're going to give you Chrome, but without all the Google terribleness. Fair enough, they did it, but they added their own terribleness, right? And so instead of getting tracked by Google, you get tracked by Microsoft. So is that better? Maybe, but it's kind of, I don't know. It's kind of a thin line.
So Bloomberg's estimate, whether how intelligent Bloomberg is or not, said it's worth $20 billion.
$20 billion. Wow.
Yeah.
But I don't,
It's
again,
only
I
worth
don't.
what people will actually pay. You can
Right.
make up
Well,
a
that's
number you
obviously
want.
true. But I don't understand really what selling it even means.
I know. It's bizarre. It's bizarre.
It's like selling Linux. You can't sell Linux.
This is the real reason that they're talking about basing Chrome OS on Android now, No, I don't know. It's very strange.
No, actually, what they're talking about is porting Chrome OS to Android to
Well,
Pixel
but,
phones.
yeah. So now it's basically Chrome on top of some thin Linux layer.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing doesn't matter. What happens to
I know.
Chromebooks? What happens to Chrome? I don't. It doesn't make sense. This is a judge who apparently
I don't know. I'm just.
doesn't-
I think to me it's fascinating.
Actually, it's not the
because
judge, it's DOJ, I should say.
Yeah, we didn't get to see what might have happened to Microsoft, right? Because that fell apart. But
Right.
it's there's going to be some. When you hear about breaking up Google, it sounds super dramatic, but what it really means is there are parts of the company that are going to maybe could get sliced off, right? To me, it seems like the advertising business should be the thing, like that
But that's
Google
the whole
becomes a
company.
tech.
I think they'll do that too, but
But that's what
Chrome
I mean. Like,
feeds into the advertising business because they
right.
gather
Well,
this information about
you
us
make
through
these
Chrome.
technology products. They're actually
Yeah.
they're doing pretty good. I mean, it's not a top 5 big tech company, but Google Cloud, whatever paid services have hardware, et cetera, that's a business.
The argument would be the Google Cloud and the Google Suite would be better off being away from the ad business.
Yeah.
Because right now
That's
they're all
the
hampered by
point.
anything that impairs ads.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that was the thing. Like when Microsoft was going to split up into the two businesses, there was talk of like, well, now Microsoft will put out Office, or that whatever that company's called, will put out Office on Linux because now they're not constrained by these competitive demands that the broader company at that time had.
Right. But that did happen to Microsoft once the Azure was their focus. Suddenly there was Office for iOS and Android.
Right. Yeah. Right. Different. Yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
But first you had to make the operating system not the focus of the company.
Right. Yeah. So advertising is the focus of this company, Google.
Yeah, the majority of the business, right?
It's 70%.
And that's why they want them to sell Chrome, because what they're saying is sell the Chrome and Android.
Well,
the
you
things
prevent
that gather data for your ad business.
How are you distributing your abuse, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're doing it through these unfair deals you have with Apple, et cetera, right? Worth tens of billions of dollars. You're doing it honestly, through Android as well.
Cory Doctorow points out that selling Chrome actually will have the exact opposite effect. He says any company that buys Chrome will know it only has a couple of years before Google will be permitted to create a new browser.
Like just create a new browser?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
so this company, whoever buys it, would be incentivized to extract as much value from Chrome as possible.
Yeah.
So it could make Chrome worse.
Yeah. So that's why. But by the way, I didn't read that, and I don't mean to say that's why but that's why I think like Mozilla would be the best possible outcome here in a way, right?
Right. They don't have $20 billion. I can tell you, they're barely.
No. Of course they don't. No, but they could get a loan. It's people. For example, like one of the things I've said about Xbox is like, look, they want to get out of hardware. Maybe there's a model where the Xbox console could become something that they license and allow hardware makers to make, right? There could be multiple consoles or whatever these devices are. And then people say, well, hold on a second. Like if Microsoft can't make money making this, how could these other companies make money? Well, Microsoft doesn't make money making PCs either, but these companies do. So smaller companies that just focus on this one thing that have maybe smaller margins, whatever, can make a go of this thing. And so I think in this world, a company like Mozilla could take this product and without all that advertising nonsense, it would be a smaller business. They could do that
today if they wanted to take Chromium.
If that would have worked, it would have done it with Mozilla.
There's ungoogled Chromium out there that people can use.
But Chrome had their finger on the scale the whole time because Chrome was paying to play, or Google was paying to play. That's the point. Like Google, look, I don't want to understate. They made a good browser too, right? I mean, but the problem is they also abused it, right? There was stuff going on behind the covers that is bad for consumers. So, Mozilla got kind of pushed aside because Google has infinite money they can pay to make sure.
I think it's hysterical that people are even
the
talking about this because it's all going to go away January 20th. Yeah. You might as well just throw everything up in the air.
I don't think this one is.
No, but we don't know what shape it will take.
Yeah, it'll change. The funny thing is it's not worth $20 billion. It costs more than $20 billion. Right? Like, Google spends billions getting Chrome placed in front of everybody.
Yeah,
that's true.
It's a cash sink, not a revenue.
That's an interesting point. Yeah.
Well, but when Google pays Apple for, whatever it was, 22 billion bucks a year, they're making 40, 60, whatever it is.
Yeah, there's certainly revenue in Chrome. But you have an ad business tied to it. Without
that's what I mean. That's how they're making
the revenue's in the ad business.
Yeah. That's right. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Chrome
that's why it's not really worth $20 billion because when you strip away the revenue that it makes from ads,
it's just a nutty. It's a nutty request from the DOJ, to be honest. And I think nobody.
I think it's a way to try and negotiate a consent decree.
And that, I understand. I think what seems to be happening right now in Washington is the current administration is trying as best it can to get whatever it can in the next 2 months, whether it's Ukraine.
I started by the previous administration.
Yes, I do.
But what do you think Elon Musk's going to say about that?
Oh, geez. maybe X could buy it.
I think you're not wrong. The relationship with the tech billionaires and the incoming administration is not small.
Not at all.
That's true.
And Sundar Pichai has very much been kissing up to the new administration.
Sure, you have to. Just the ring, like
I would if I were him.
He's not exactly a tech bro, but he wore a bandana or something. He could get in there.
Well, it's funny because it's so confusing. JD Vance loves Lena Khan and thinks, yes,
that's funny because
he's praised her publicly.
Right. Okay.
He thinks that so there is this kind of bipartisan consensus that big tech's bad for different reasons. But
completely
big tech's
different
bad.
Reasons. Yeah.
So there is definitely a target on big tech, but it's. I think that we know that the Trump administration is pretty transactional. So it's really going to come down to
transactional.
How it
that's
works,
a great term, by the way.
It is.
It's accurate. Okay. Yeah, I'm just sort of. To me, it's interesting. I don't actually have a strong opinion about it. I don't. I don't
think it's a remedy.
I don't know what. I think Richard's onto something. I think as a regulator, it's sort of like when you're playing a football game, final seconds of the game, a team is on the verge of potentially scoring a touchdown, but it's fourth down, and they're trying to get the other team to come offsides, and it doesn't work, and you call a timeout, and you just kick, and like what they're trying to do is like maybe we can force them to the table, and say, look, I guess you're going to go for this nuclear option. Okay, that's our mistake. Let's make some concessions, because the better outcome here is behavioral concessions that come from Google that the government agrees to, or the courts or whatever.
Yeah, stop.
Although I guess you've already, but you've
placement.
also, I mean, you've been found guilty. It's kind of too late for this. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. It's fascinating.
If they stopped paying for Chrome placement, wouldn't that actually be the real remedy?
Itself? There you go.
Yeah, but it kills Mozilla.
It does. I know, but see, everyone says that, and you're right. But that's not, look, if your business is being propped up by what is essentially
maybe
the
you
mob,
should be killed. Yeah.
Maybe you should be killed.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you should be allowed
no
to
offense,
die.
but I mean, I love what Mozilla stands for. They've made a lot of mistakes. Mm-hmm. And if your business is literally predicated on the world's worst company feeding you money every week to keep you alive so they can point to you and say, hey, look, we have competition. It's not a business, sorry. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's not a reason to allow the abuse of this company to continue. It just isn't. I'm sorry. I love Mozilla. I wish
because we need the diversity. We need more of that kind of company too. I mean, but this is not working. So,
okay.
Richard, you missed the whole .NET Conf thing. You have no idea. I feel like you and I
are quite annoyed that I wasn't there to host a session too, because I was in.
I maybe this is something I got to talk to you about. I have so much I want to talk about.
The
we
Uno
only
guys are
have
coming
a
on
3-hour show. So,
I know. So I got to move on. I'm going to move on. So
we're 2.5 hours in now.
Uno platform, which I've kind of ignored for a long time, is sort of a WPF replacement but cross-platform. So inherently interesting. They have there's a lot of hut reload in the industry right now, but they also have what they call hut. I think they call it hut design, which is horrible. But basically, you have a designer and code, and you can update the design in real time, and it refreshes on the.
So it depends on hot reload, which is a .NET capability.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. So
but the Uno guys are taking on a really hard problem, because these relativistic UX approaches, where you just dynamically build, they're really hard to build a designer for. And so for people who aren't programmers will probably remember classic Visual Basic. Well, anything with
WinForms. Canvas, a form.
Yeah.
You would drag controls onto it. You would double click the control, and you would write a little bit of code to handle that event. And it was awesome. It was fun.
It's also still true today, right? In the Studio 2022, you can make a WinForms client and you will get the designer.
Yeah, right. So the successor to that stuff, Microsoft got C# with Anders Heilsberg, and they did Windows Forms. It was probably roughly 2000, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And then for the .NET Wave or whatever, they did Avalon, which became WPF, and they've had that. And that's been kind of brought back from the dead. Like, I've been working in WPF this past year, right? We've talked about this a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of
They've made some attempts at a designer for WPF.
But they have, but that's where it's fallen apart. So if you this is where I just looked at this today. In fact, I was working on this before the show. There's a lot more information about the updates they did for WPF and .NET 9 in videos from .NET Conf. So I've been watching that stuff. There's some new capabilities they never talked about anywhere else. They've done a horrible job of communicating what they've done. So there's more work to be done that will occur in .NET 10. But in WPF today, if you bring up a existing new project, whatever, in Visual Studio, what you get is sort of a wireframe view of the UI in the XAML designer. If you go to WinUI, which is the most modern, whatever version, you do not get a visual designer. Microsoft has basically given up on this. There was a time period where they had expression and blend and whatever they were doing over time. But Microsoft, if you asked, and Uno they said, are you going to do this? Like, nope, we're done. We're not even going to try anymore. So the reason they made Platform Studio is because Microsoft's not going to address this problem. So it is a very real problem, because complicated apps, like professional apps, not the stupid things I make, but like apps that like a company would make, is a team of people involved. And you have programmers obviously writing code. But you also have designers working in things like Figma, and never the twain shall meet. And so I talked to these guys this past week. It was kind of interesting because I'm sort of vaguely aware of this stuff, but today, if you create a design of an app in Figma or whatever app you might use, and then you hand it off to the developers, I said, well, surely this must export to XAML or whatever. They're like, no, they literally look at a picture and they recreate it in code. It's like,
because
okay.
Figma definitely generates C# and XAML.
I know it does. It does. I think it does do C# markup, but the problem is like it's not like a live view. Like it is literally.
It's
like,
definitely a stage. You design your hand to the thing and you spit it out, and now you embed it in your app.
So Uno is basically given or made this capability to take a Figma design and in real time do a hot refresh into a code-based version of it, so that as you maybe remotely even like cross-platform or looking at this app with multiple people, someone could say, hey, I think we should move the button up 3 inches or whatever it is. They can do it in Figma and it comes up in the code. It's like, this is... It's exciting.
Well, and it addresses the bigger problem here, which is I needed to work on a tablet as well as a flat screen.
And that's
PC.
that's right. It's also
so it's the media query effect.
Yeah, so it will work on web, it'll work on Android, it works on iOS, etc. So that's good.
Yeah, no, it's compelling and it's long overdue in some respects.
I need to talk to you about that. We're going to talk. And seriously, dude, not done that, but can we just make this?
Yeah, with you.
Make this happen? Okay. All right. So, so I'm sorry. I don't mean to pester you and like live on a podcast, but
wouldn't be the first time.
Can we talk?
Okay.
I
go away for 2 weeks.
I know. Yeah, I know. It was like the critical 2 weeks too. Like,
I'm laughing at you. Messaged me a couple of times. Like, you're going to make it this week, but Kev messaged me too. So I'm like,
yeah, I'm sure
somebody's been missing me. I think.
I just want to go on record. I did not send you any emails.
You did not,
at all.
Leo, and I'm a little sad. Really, it's like I know where the love is.
I thought, gosh, I wish Richard.
The first week you missed, I tell my wife this story too. Like, I talked about the guy. I almost said The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was written by
Douglas Adams.
Sorry. Yep. So he, like a lot, like Stephen Fry was like this in the early 2000s, had a tech blog, and then of course sadly passed away. But he had this tech assistant who worked with him, and he kept the thing going for a little while. And at the time, what had just happened was like Mac OS 10 Tiger had come out. And I remember he said he had written in this blog, like, Douglas would have loved Mac OS 10 Tiger. Douglas would have got Tiger. And I don't remember what the topic was. It was 2 weeks ago, but I said to Leo, I'm like, Richard would have got this. Like, I know, but you were gone. And I was like, I want to talk to him about this. And
gone, but not forgotten, Richard.
Yes.
Isn't that far away.
I got to talk to you, man. Okay. So, Xbox, we've had our weeks. We've had our less than exciting weeks. We've had our really big weeks. Actually, this year it's been kind of interesting. This is a big one. Like, this is a big week for like games, Xbox and otherwise. Phil Spencer gave another interview, and as Phil Spencer does, he just starts talking about stuff. He's like, and I have to think at some point someone, and there's only really one person higher up than him at Microsoft, to come to think of it, will say, hey, dude, shut up. But he kind of talked about how, hey, the hardware is not the future. That said, we do think about portable Xbox something, and we're working on it. And I'm not saying it's coming out anytime soon, but this is an area I've kind of speculated a little bit about, whether this thing might be like a Steam Deck type thing, like PC based, or the future could be this ARM-based thing, which we know they were working on. We don't know what came of it. We'll see. But he actually talked about it. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, it's crazy. Like, you've got stuff to sell, and you're just talking about something else.
Yeah.
And he also talked about this, the mobile app / game stores they want to make on iOS and Android, and those in the US that's been delayed because the Google stuff has been pushed back, and they're going to obviously appeal, and I said we'll see what happens, but it's inevitable that Microsoft and others will put their app stores on these platforms. But it also
is necessary, right? Like, in the end, Microsoft owns the game studios. They're going to make the games for all the existing platforms. Like, why would you make an Xbox portable when there already is a Steam Deck and all of your games run on it, and you will make money every time a game gets installed on it?
I think that right. So so the next story is about this new ad that Microsoft put out that is freaking people out, even though they've been talking about this for 2 years. But this notion that Xbox is not the console only. It is, in fact, the console is, remember when like Steve Jobs got up on stage one time and he said, hey, the Mac used to be the center of the ecosystem. Now the Mac is out here and this is other stuff. And the other stuff was, mobile devices, iPhone especially. This is that moment for Xbox. Like, we made a go of this. It's been 20 years. It hasn't really gone great for us. But now we own all these game studios and they sell cross-platform. We're going to bring more of our stuff to those game studios. And one of the things that Phil Spencer alluded to was this notion of like, the next Xbox, the next Halo, it's going to be on PlayStation. Yep. I mean, come on. Now, the way you react to that, not you, Richard, but anyone, is kind of telling, right? For the hardcore kind of Xbox guys, they don't want to hear that. Like, they get freaked up.
I like my tribe. Don't mess with my tribe.
Here's the thing, though. I played Call of Duty a lot, and Call of Duty improved dramatically when they made multiplayer cross-platform. They first did it console to console, PlayStation, Xbox together. It dramatically expanded the audience, right? Way better.
Yeah, and the network effect is a bigger benefit. More players.
And now you also have PC users in there, and by the way, you also have cloud streaming guys in there. So you could have a guy, like literally in a game, you could have a guy on an Xbox with a controller, guy on a PlayStation with a controller, guy on a PC with a controller, guy on an iPad with a controller. He's doing it through cloud gaming. Yeah. And why not?
Yeah, what do you care?
So it's tied to your question earlier, like why?
Yeah.
I think part of it is they want the hardware thing that they do to be ARM based, and because it's efficient for all the reasons we know. But that the Xbox hardware, whatever it might be, will be sort of like it's a PC-based platform with one exception. Every Xbox console has been a PC, essentially, PC hardware.
Except for the 360.
Except for right, which is PowerPC. So I feel like the next one, they want it to be ARM. And now they can offer this, this didn't work.
You're going to spend $150 million developing an ARM-based Xbox that you're going to make no money on. You basically sell it for cost.
Right.
Unless you may have a major hardware flaw, in which case it's going to cost you billions.
But they could farm out to hardware makers, right? That's part of a thing I invented. But
you still have the basic problem of there's no point in improving the machine right now and giving it more performance when the studios cannot fully utilize them as they are.
Right.
Yeah. Like the real inflection point, the reason there's no PlayStation 6 is that the studios are screaming, don't give us more compute. We can't use it.
We can't even, exactly. We can't take advantage of the thing we have.
No, it costs too much.
That's right.
Right.
But
arguably, generative
if you
AI
can
may
consolidate,
change this, right? Like this.
So, but here's the part of the problem right now is you have mobile, which is two discrete platforms. You have desktop, which is one, but two if you include Mac, and three if you include Linux platforms. You have console, which is three discrete platforms. So, I know we went down this path.
Really,
it didn't go great.
Nintendo lives on its own. It's its own games. It's an
but you can't ignore that market. They have won again. This generation by far, right?
Well, Nintendo got off the hardware race 10 years ago, and they've been right ever since.
And it's worked out pretty well for them. Yeah, exactly. Which is why I sort of wonder about this notion of Xbox hardware, thanks to AI-based, in this we work great on Qualcomm or ARM hardware, upscaling and all this stuff where you could have like this thing that honestly could not run this stuff very well, but because it does upscaling, it looks great.
Yeah.
I mean, it would run efficiently.
I have so much compute, hardware. I can afford to not actually fix the game, just do it dynamically.
Don't worry about it. Exactly. Yeah, it's all. I feel like it's
still back to the problem of it. Why do I need to build a new piece of hardware?
Yeah, because I think the plan here would be a singular platform that would run across what we think of as console and PC.
Yeah,
and it would just make it easier on developers to create app or games that would run across platforms.
I think we are in stasis right now. While generative AI penetrates the game development market.
Yep. And while I maybe ARM is not, well, I feel like ARM is there, but actually the weakest part of the Qualcomm platform is the graphics.
Yep.
And we just don't see native games running on ARM.
No, the hardware is not going to be relevant until we actually can utilize it.
Yeah. So you said stasis, great word. I think of it as more like a holding pattern. It's like, are we ready yet? Nope. Are we ready yet?
No.
Nope.
We're waiting for a title to come out that utilizes generative AI to cut the cost of development more than in half. I would say by
so it's like
70%.
Dear Copilot, could you make a version of Halo that doesn't suck?
Well, get rid of having to pre-generate all those backgrounds. Get rid of having to generate all those scripts. Get rid of the most expensive parts of making a game that costs hundreds of people in a year. So
this also has not gone well, and this is a little down the list, but I would just mention that today? I think it was today. No, yesterday. I don't know what's going on.
Time is relative.
I just flew back from XCOM out of my mind. Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 arrived, right?
Yeah.
So this is the world inside of the game. Like, it's insane. And part of this is the science experiment where in previous versions of the game, as you downloaded these world expansion packs, they would get all the high-res assets and whatever. So, you'd fly over Paris. It would look amazing. It would look like Paris. It wouldn't look like some blob,
Nope.
You would have to download all those things, to your computer or to your console. Now that stuff is going to be streamed from Azure. And so this is a step toward this thing you're talking about, where they're not necessarily generating new content on the fly, which I think is what you mean really, but they're also not even allowing you, even if you said, look, I got a 2 terabyte hard drive, I don't care, like download it. Like, nope, that stuff is coming from Azure. We're going to stream it.
Right.
And so we have our first example of what I would call kind of a hybrid game, hybrid. This is hybrid cloud on-prem, I guess. But day one did not go great, by the way. I guess there were a lot of problems getting online and performance was terrible, but give it a second. I mean, we'll see. I think it will be okay eventually. But yeah, I think this is they're going to look at this and say, all right, well, what about the next Halo? What about the next Gears? What about the next Call of Duty?
No, I think a lot of PMs are struggling mightily because they're looking at their budgets and looking at the risk, and they're worried they're going to get totally scooped. You spend $150 million trying to develop a tier one game, and somebody does it for $50 million, and it doesn't matter what happens after that.
That's right. Yeah, this is the Netflixization of games. We're going to have Ryan Reynolds or whomever, and I pay him a lot of money, and we're going to make this piece of garbage that's all green screen, and then never actually go to Europe, or whatever it is, right? But why not? I mean, and games have gotten too expensive to make and too time consuming to make, frankly, and the stakes are so high that if you screw this up. Like, you have a
there's
version
only
of
a
Call
dozen
of Duty.
billion-dollar games a year only.
Yeah, I mean, like,
but there's hundreds of games made, right? Like, it's why we keep retreading the same ideas over and over again. Why there's yet another Call of Duty, because that one will make $1 billion.
Right. I hate that Call of Duty was the inspiration for the Marvel universe, but God damn it. Anyway, okay,
is that true? No, you're just making
but I mean, but in the sense that, like, not really. I mean, not literally, but you can see the progression, right? Not literally, but yeah, Call of Duty is not that terrible. So this has been an awesome month for Game Pass. I mentioned Flight Sim. That's, if you have Game Pass, you get Flight Sim standard, and you get that on PC, the latest consoles, X and S. Get it on Game Pass Ultimate and PC Game Pass. You get it on game streaming if you have Ultimate, right? So you kind of play that one. I haven't yet played it. Like I said, just flew home. But I think today or tomorrow, Stalker 2, that game that takes place in Chernobyl, right? We've been waiting on this thing for, 15 years, is available. If it is tomorrow, as you watch or listen, this will be out. But if it hasn't come out yet, you can actually preload this PC or console. So get it going, because seriously, it's like 100.
Wow. Is it going to be really great?
Huge.
150. It's supposed to be very, very, it looks beautiful. We'll see. Yeah. I am definitely going to play this one. I have preloaded it. I did take the time to do that today.
So you're wandering around Chernobyl?
Yeah. Actually, it comes out today. I'm sorry. Yeah. November 20th. So that's happening. Aliens Dark Descent is coming at the end of the month. This has been a good one. So there's been some good stuff. Big one. These are big games. Flight Simulator outside of Activision Blizzard is, and Call of Duty is arguably the biggest, Microsoft Studio game of the year, I would say. Like, it's big. And I don't just mean on disc. I mean, like, it's a big, it's a big
Not
game.
physically, just the.
Yeah. It's a big title for Microsoft. So
what is
that's
this
a good
disc you speak of?
one. Yes. Avowed, which is eagerly anticipated. Is it Blizzard? No, Obsidian game.
I'm going to play this Stalker 2 video.
Yeah, it's beautiful looking.
It's
looks
made in
beautiful.
Ukraine. Did you notice that? That's
Yes.
interesting.
That is where Chernobyl is.
A month or so ago, I mentioned this, but there's a documentary about the making of this game that's for free at YouTube, wherever. Go watch this. It's incredible.
Looks a little like Half-Life.
Yeah.
Has that feeling a little
We're
bit.
going to talk about that in a second, too.
It's all about the radiation.
Yeah.
Perimeter cage. Perhaps all the zone really needs is our compassion.
No, it's a video game. There's no compassion. Looks just like Half-Life.
It looks a little bit like Call of Duty, too. Until
Well, of course.
until the
Everything's
mutants
gonna
start occurring.
FPS looks like FPS.
Yeah, it's all going to look like Call of Duty soon. That's all it'll be
All
left.
duty all the time.
All the
It
time.
looks,
Call of Duty.
it looks really, really, really good. So for you Xbox holdouts, you goons,
Microsoft has a message for you.
This for that. This for that. This for that. This for that.
These are all different Xboxes, including an iPhone. A Steam
See,
Deck.
to me, this is just common sense. This is what they've been
Yeah.
talking about for 2 years. We're going to meet you where you are, right?
Yep.
Your game, you buy into this thing, whatever it is, a subscription or purchase games, whatever, and your games will be available like where you are. Like,
Yeah.
to me, this is common sense.
Yeah.
And then you read headlines, they're like, oh, Microsoft doesn't even know what an Xbox is. It's like, guys, you got to start paying attention a little bit here.
Yeah.
This is an Xbox,
It's,
right?
well, I mean, it's not an Xbox, but it is a place where you can play Xbox games.
Right.
And I think
Well,
it's
it brings into the question of like, what does it mean to say it's an Xbox? An Xbox is wherever you play Xbox games.
okay, but when Apple introduced the iPhone and they said there's an iPod in there, where people are like, oh yeah, but what does it mean? An iPod.
Right,
You don't have a,
right.
Like, I mean, guys, like the world evolves. Like,
Right.
and in this case, I don't know if you paid attention, but they didn't really win the console war. So
It makes perfect sense. They might have
yep.
won the game wars, though.
the people who are the most offended by this are the ones who will benefit by it the most, because your investment in Xbox continues.
right.
Like it, you know what I mean? It brings it to more places. Like, this is what you should want.
Yep.
I don't know.
all
it's a
restaurants
weird-
are
it's
Taco
But,
Bell,
you're still,
and all games are Call of Duty.
I love it.
Yep. This is a Taco Bell. This is also a Taco Bell.
Yeah.
This is a picture of a bathroom and like a rest area. This is also a Taco Bell.
Pretty soon we have to talk about the 3 shells.
It's one of the, I don't remember when, one of the earliest things I remember that Richard said was, you were joking about, what's that place? Arby's. You said, it's like meat. You're like-
That's an apt description.
Yeah.
actually. It's about as-
I was like,
Meat-ish.
you're like, yeah, it's sort of like meat. Microsoft does have, or Blizzard, which is part of, is it Blizzard? Yeah, but Blizzard has an Xbox console exclusive coming, or actually, I think it's coming on PC too, actually, called Avowed. So that's coming in February. So you have that to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have this crazy set of, I keep mentioning this, like this notion of games being remastered or games just being upsized automatically and
Yes.
suddenly becoming replayable again.
Yeah.
So Warcraft 1 and 2 remasters are, I think, available now, celebrating the 20th anniversary of that franchise. Warcraft 3 Reforged 2.0 is also available. Days ago, Valve announced the celebration of the 20th anniversary of Half-Life 2.
Yeah.
A year ago.
I can't believe it's 20 years.
I know. So a
That
year
is
ago was the
mind-blowing.
Getting really
20th.
very old.
yeah.
Yeah. The 25th anniversary of the original Half-Life, I think, was last year, about a year ago now. This game was so revolutionary when it came out. It's like it was given to us by aliens.
Yeah.
If you look at Half-Life and then look at Half-Life 2, that leap does not make sense.
No.
That game still looks great now. And by the way,
Yeah.
I will make the case that this might literally be the greatest video game ever created ever.
Yeah,
And it is
that's an
still-
interesting debate.
Yeah, I know. It's an unwinnable debate in many ways, but it's wherever you land on that, it's in the top 5. I mean, it's right there. It is as influential as anything id Software ever made.
Yeah, it's the impact on the gaming industry, like the way games are made.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then they completely effed it up. And they did episode 1, 2, and not 3, and then not Half-Life 3. And I could murder because they never left this hanging. But
they started making money on online games, and suddenly those games were
Left
too
4
expensive to make.
Okay, it makes me crazy. But anyway,
back to the same mantra. Like it's just it's too expensive to make games.
The sale's over, but over the weekend this game was available for free, which they've done a couple of times on Steam. It's cheap. I mean, if you want to buy this right now, it's probably $5 or $10. It's nothing. It's still worth playing. It's amazing.
It's a really great story.
It's so incredible. It's awesome. It's been updated, so it looks awesome on modern computers. Yada yada yada. It's got all that stuff, and they've integrated the 2 episodes into the main app UI, whatever. It's just goddamn. It's so good. Separately and completely unrelated, but still related. GOG.com, GOG, which used to be called Good Old Gamers, announced a sort of like game preservation effort. And they have some, I think, 20-something games that are classic games that they certify run perfectly well on modern computers and look great. And they'll keep updated, blah, blah, blah. There's no DRM and all that stuff. Separate from that, basically a group of game enthusiasts released the original Unreal and Unreal Tournament, both of which, by the way, just like
another one,
some of the greatest games ever made.
Yeah.
Unreal primarily for single player, Unreal Tournament solely for multiplayer, was so frenetic and fast and amazing. And this is the one where, remember this one that was always like, First Blood, multi-kill, mega kill. It was awesome. It was awesome. They had all different game types like Carry the Flag and whatever. Awesome. And then they did a bunch of sequels, 2002, 3, 4, whatever. My son and I played these games endlessly.
Yeah.
These games are available for free. They work fine on modern computers. They're owned by Epic Games, and these releases were not by Epic Games, but people asked. They said, "Yep, we don't care. Go for it." They let them out. It's good to go.
What happens.
Yep, it's awesome. So this is it's video game history. I'm not saying I'm actually not saying that Unreal is necessarily playable, but actually a lot like the original Half-Life, I guess. And I'm trying to think what else it's like. The Duke Nukem is like this a little bit. The first episode of this, the first part especially, is amazing. You wake up in a prison. The door is open. You don't know what's going on. You can get out, and there's an alien race, and bad things happen. But awesome game, awesome. So a lot of really neat stuff happening.
Some of it is just nostalgic. Some of it is just we have excess compute. Let's do something with it.
Like look, when it comes to Half-Life 2, especially, I would say, nostalgia. It's also right now. It's awesome to play this game.
Yeah,
it's a great story.
In the end, it's fun.
It's so good.
It's very fun.
So good.
Well, it brings back the most important point about gaming, which is it's the game, not the technology.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. Although that's the thing. Absolutely, 100%. The world is so immersive, and your introduction. You arrive on the train and you go through the process, and someone grabs you, and you think you're going to get beaten up. It's your buddy, and whatever happens. But it's the introduction to the world is so perfect that by the time you step out into the square and the thing comes up and takes your picture and the thing walks by, you're like, how is this not a movie?
Well,
how is this not a Netflix series?
I brought this up the other day about Half-Life 2 because Half-Life was all inside a building, right?
Yeah.
It was your standard Wolfenstein scroller. Right. FPS scroller. And then the whole trick with Half-Life 2 was you started out in a building and then you went out the door.
Yeah. And it's not just, it's like the Wizard of Oz where it just like opens up and what is happening?
Directly into a derived Soviet brutalism landscape.
It is so perfect. I literally, to this day, like I've done this everywhere in Europe. I did it with the last time I went back to Boston. I was standing on the subway platform at the T with my friends. And they did a little like announcement, and it was Half-Life 2 to me, and I'm like, civil inobedience will not be tolerated. Please proceed to the processing facility. Like it impacted me so much that I hear things in the real world,
and it sounds,
and it's Half-Life 2. Yeah,
it's such a good
So,
job.
by the way, take the time, go watch the documentary about this. It's incredible the way. And sure enough, like the guys who designed the game went to these abandoned train stations and wherever else in Eastern Europe, and they were like, and I'm like, yeah, no, obviously you did. It's perfect. So anyway, it's awesome. Okay, sorry. And then my PlayStation, Sony has something called the PlayStation Portal. So PlayStation Portal is not actually a portable gaming device per se, but it's a way to stream, games or whatever. So now they allow you to stream PS Plus games through this device, which I know, as I say, you're like, wait, you couldn't do this before. What was the point of this? But now you can. So yeah, now I'm not sure the number of games. I want to say there's over 100 games. So if you have like PlayStation Plus is their version of what used to be Xbox Game Pass, and now Game Pass, right? So I think they have different tiers. They have, different, I'm not really as much into that, but they have expanded this. So PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and I think Windows PC, I think there's an app for it as well. You can, play a bunch of their games over this service. So obviously of interest, but, not like of the Half-Life 2 level quality of interest. Right. So anyway, some good stuff. So yeah, this has been a good week for games.
This is a good week for gaming.
Might be the best week this entire year. I mean, other than all the layoffs and studio closures. I mean, aside from that, like this
has to be a game developer, but it's fun to be a gamer.
Yeah.
I want to play Stalker 2 now. I'll have to check it out.
I know. I like I said, I preloaded it. I'm going to check that out.
That game is pretty dark, man.
It looks dark. Yeah.
It looks beautiful though, right?
It is
I still play a game I started playing in COVID. I can't stop Valheim.
Oh, Valheim. Okay, I'm like, what's he going to say? Okay.
Well, they were smart. They released it pre-release for $20, and then every year or so they add another biome.
So do you still play this on some giant screen?
Yeah, my 55-inch OLED. You bet. Nice. I've tried playing it on smaller screens, and
it's not.
No. I need to be a Viking. I need to live as a Viking.
Literally sit there in like furs and whatever.
Oh yeah. I have a wolf.
Are you gnawing on a turkey leg? What are you doing?
Yes.
You're like,
actually, lox meat is the meat. You really,
nice.
Very
it's
good.
Lox.
Yeah,
yes.
they're lox.
That's what you're going to dip in Richard's drink later.
We will get to Richard's drink in a bit,
and
the tips and picks of the week. The back of the book is just around the corner. You are watching Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell, and our show today brought to you by our good listeners, the good people at Club Twit. We love you, Club Twitters, and we thank you. If you're listening and you're not a member, I would love to invite you to join. We keep it pretty affordable. It's only $20 a month, which is nice. Did I say 20?
Yeah.
It's only $10 a month. Wait a minute. No, it's not that. It's only $7 a month.
How much would you pay?
How do they get away with that? Many podcasts, you'd get one show for $7, but no, you get them all. You get ad-free versions of every show we do. You get access to the Club Twit Discord, which is a community of, it's a self-selected community of smart, interesting people who love technology. So it's a great place to hang. You also get to watch shows that we don't put out in public, like Micah's Crafting Corner. We've got the Chris Marquardt photo show coming up in a little bit. Stacy's Book Club, another coffee clatch with Mark Prince. That's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to do a coffee tasting. So that should be really interesting. All those are just, benefits. But the real reason you join the club, I hope, is to support what you do. What we do. If you like our shows, if you think the shows are worthwhile, if you like our hosts. By the way, I don't get any of the money. Not $1 goes into my pocket. It goes to Paul and Richard and John Ashley and Kevin King, our producers, and Benito Gonzalez. It supports. It takes a big team to do this. It supports them, keeps the lights on. We've cut back as much as we could. We shut down the studio. We're doing what we can, but we really want to keep doing the content because I think that's what really we bring to the table that's unique. If you like it and you appreciate it and you listen, join the club. $7 a month. That's all. It keeps it going. That's the key. Twit.tv/Club Twitter. Scan that QR code in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. Twit.tv/Club Twit. A couple of good things I should mention. 2 weeks free, so you could try before you buy if you want. And when you join, you will get a code that you could post on your socials and everywhere else. And everybody who uses that code to join gets you a free month. So did I say $7 a month? It could be free forever if you have enough friends. twit.tv/club twit. Thank you in advance. We really appreciate it. It's time for the back of the book. And I think now would be a good time to introduce a man, a myth, a legend, Mr. Paul Thurrott. Yes.
So one of the big differences maybe between the Xbox Series X and S and the PlayStation 5 is that Sony went with just normal M2 slots for storage. Like, so if you want to add more storage, it's actually pretty straightforward. Microsoft went with more of a traditional looking cartridge thing, kind of proprietary, whatever. It's still an SSD, obviously, but haven't had too many options for storage, and they've been pretty expensive, and they still are. But right now, the middle tier Western Digital storage module, which is 1 terabyte, is a pretty good price for this kind of thing, like better than Apple prices, right? So typically, I think the 512 is about $75. The 1 terabyte is maybe $130, $140, somewhere in there. And then 2 terabytes is, we don't want to talk about that. But the 2 lower end ones are on sale at Amazon and Best Buy.
This is physical storage, not cloud storage.
It's like a plug-in little.
Yeah, I have one in my. But you have to buy the one that's specifically for it.
That's right. You can't just buy anything. So the Western Digital version, the 1 terabyte is $99. It's usually $160 actually. So
that's a good deal.
That's actually a pretty significant price cut.
Yeah.
So if you need, especially on an S, if you like I do, like the initial S, I think it was 512 gigabytes. This is a pretty good upgrade. So, if you've been kind of holding off on that, this is the time. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but Microsoft has announced their Black Friday deals across Xbox, Surface, et cetera, et cetera. So
getting to that time of year, aren't we?
Yeah, getting there.
This is time.
Yeah, you already had Thanksgiving, right, Richard?
We do it in October, like civilized people.
Yeah. So, do you have Black Friday in October as well, or
no?
Oh my God! I listen. I'm pretty sure you guys put gummy bears in your stuffing, and I don't want to hear about this. But
November 29th is the year all the Canadians come over the border to shop at Costco.
Oh boy,
it's a tradition.
We use Amazon. We do have a family member who's U.S. who's coming up next week, so we will do Thanksgiving.
There you go
with him.
It's
just an excuse to eat
I'm going to bring. I'm bringing Thanksgiving to Mexico. I've talked to my friends there.
Idea.
I'm like, I think Mexicans would love Thanksgiving. I think they would love the food aspect of it. I think they would love the food, but also just the whole family vibe of it. The point of it is not.
You've never met people so into family to you.
That's what I mean. Like I've been telling so many people, like they're all curious about. They know about it, but.
That and arguing politics, which is a very keen thing in the Mexican family. No, wait, that's wrong. No.
The best
drunken uncles. That's what they do. Drunken uncles.
Yeah. No, that's actually one thing people there are just kind of open about. They're like, "Who did you vote for?" And I'm like, "Excuse me." Like I don't know if your world's a little different
about that. Actually,
whenever I'm in a foreign country, I just announce I didn't vote for him.
Yeah.
I just say,
we were in France one year. So this was like George W. Bush time frame. And this guy in a market we had never been to, and I think we only went the one time. It was just random. This guy said, if I ask you a question, I said, sure. He said, do you support, George W. Bush? I'm like, no, that guy's an idiot. And he goes, I don't understand. He goes, every American I ask.
Yeah, who voted for him?
Answers the same way. Like, how did this guy become president? I'm like, you're not going to meet anyone who voted for him in your country. Those people don't travel.
They don't. They consider
yeah. So
French,
anyway, people are intrigued.
Surrender monkeys. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
meantime,
some time ago, a month ago or so, OpenAI finally released their initial early version of their Chat GPT app for Windows, which was like a little bit of a middle finger, honestly, because the Mac version had been available for a while. The iPhone version had been available for a while.
I always just use it on the web.
Pretty sure Apple didn't invest $13 billion in OpenAI. I'd have to look it up. But anyway,
I think it's more about dev resources than it has to do with it.
Yeah, well, I know, but seriously, but anyway, I guess it's gotten a lot better. So there's an updated version of it. It's now available to everyone who uses ChatGPT. You don't have to have a paying subscription like you used to before. It works.
Well, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, so it's available. But actually, they've also updated the Mac version. And I think this is an interesting peek at the future. So the way they're billing it is that it integrates with certain apps that you have installed on the Mac. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean?
That's interesting.
But actually, they're all developer apps. So it's Visual Studio Code, Xcode, Terminal.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so it'll notice you have Xcode and say, hey, you want me to fill this in?
So it would be like
I saw
run
that.
everything. Yeah, that's very interesting. So I think obviously that will come to Windows eventually, but I also think it will expand out to other apps, right? And so I think, if you've been kind of like, like Chat or Copilot, who cares? Like maybe this is kind of an interesting thing. And then
now it's time.
Of course, last week, or whenever it was, Microsoft now allows you to remap the Copilot key. I mean, well, I guess one thing you could do is remap it to ChatGPT. You radical leftist.
Look at you troublemaker.
And then just briefly, like Stardock released their first the 1.0 version of desktop GPT. And this is their, a lot like, same thing, like prompt opens up in the middle of the screen. But the big thing there's two big things there is that they let you connect to multiple or different LLMs. So it's not just tied to a single thing. And you can pick whichever one you want for certain tasks. But they also have this kind of template capability, which I look at as sort of like a scripting capability. So you can write these templates that run against specific LLMs so that you're doing kind of a manual orchestrator kind of a thing. So this is a perk of Object Desktop. So if you're already paying for that, you get this for free. It's worth checking out. I don't think, you can't actually buy it separately. So you have to have Object Desktop. And then just real quick, Arc Search is now available on Android, right? So it was open beta for about 6 weeks. Now it's broadly available. And the big thing here is it's not like a straight up web browser, but it's more like a kind of a front end to search. So you can just do a search and it will go to Google search or whatever you configure. But the big thing is their browse for me capability, where they use generative AI to create like a nice presentation of something. So when you have a question like who is, fill in the blank, this person, or what is like what is a latte or whatever, they get, it's a nice presentation.
What is a latte?
What is a latte?
Which is a question I often ask at Dunkin' Donuts when I order a latte, and they say, "Would you like some sugar with that?" And I'm like, "Excuse me, I said I would like a latte." Do you not know what a latte is?
Do you not know what Dunkin' is? That's the problem.
Because I just
see where you
I feel like if
are?
I wanted sugar in this, I would have asked you for that. But that's anyway.
Not that he has strong opinions about this.
I think things mean things, and I don't know.
This is where you go wrong, right there. Honestly,
Right. Yeah, that's probably true.
yeah.
All right.
Yes, I'm sorry.
All
From
right.
Dunkin' Donuts' perspective, just real quick, the reason they do it is because they make a latte for someone, and then they go, "There's no sugar in this." And they're like, "Yeah, you didn't ask for sugar."
Yeah.
Didn't you order a latte?
That's why. You ordered a latte. Latte does not have sugar. This is
You
our
could
world.
put sugar in a latte, but it is not a requirement.
You could, but then you
They're
ruined it.
thinking Frappuccino is what I think.
Yeah, exactly. Can
Is
I
it
get some ice in this
Frappuccino
thing?
just code language for milkshake for adult?
Yes. Grown up
it's
had
like
a milkshake.
Can I have
Yeah.
6 different forms of sugar in a glass? Yes. We actually have a name for that. It's a
How many
brand name.
pumps would you like?
Yeah, pumps. Jeez.
Yes.
Oh my
Would
God.
you
When
like
you've been
it-
asked that question, something has gone
I'd like the large Frappuccino and a shot of insulin,
pump
please.
anything, I'm walking out the door, right? There'll be no pumping.
I like it. You're a coffee purist. Do you get good coffee in Mexico?
I'm so sad you asked me this. So there is good coffee in Mexico, but we spent 20 years doing home swaps in Europe, and with one exception, I think, they all had like those little Nespresso machines with the pause, right? I wanted one of these for 20 years. And I begged my wife, and she said, "No, these things are an ecological disaster. We're not doing this, blah,
She's
blah, blah, whatever."
Yeah.
So, she's smart. So we got to Mexico, and I was like, "Listen, I want to get an espresso thing. Can we just get an espresso?" And she's like, "All right, fine, screw it. Yes, we can get an espresso." I hate it. I hate it so much.
It's not good coffee.
It's not good coffee.
It's also
So
hard work.
we went through every single, they're all like city names and stuff. There's a kaleidoscope of colors. We went through every single one of them, and we only found one I like. It's Milan. I think
It all comes from the same Keurig.
I know, it's the stupidest thing.
Yeah.
So we go and buy, we have to, get more, and we bring the capsules back, which, it's Mexico. They throw them in the trash. And then they're like, what would you like? We're like, we would like 36 boxes of Milan. And they're like, you don't want it? I'm like, no, just Milan.
Just the one flavor.
I hate it so much.
So funny.
I wanted one for so long.
Get a Bambino. Get a Breville Bambino. You can make real espresso. But
what would I be like if I was happy, Leo? You don't want me content.
Oh, yeah, that's true. It's
it's better. I got to be honest.
Better you're miserable. Better you're miserable. Yeah.
But you're right. No, you're right. There's better coffee, but
there, and I'm sure you can go out and get good coffee out the door.
Oh, no, there's fantastic. But one of the highest rated coffee shops in the entire city is like 2 seconds from her. It's stupid. It's
Mexico
like
is the home of coffee and chocolate. I mean, there's really good stuff there.
That's true.
All right. Enough of this guy, Paul.
I know.
Richard Campbell has some stuff to tell us. Let's start with Runners Radio, Richard.
My friend Dan Mallet, who I got to get face-to-face with at NDC Porto, which was a few weeks back, and got to chat a little bit about how we test databases. So this was really getting into the development practice of continuous integration to continuous deployment, which is normal with your application, but it's a little trickier with databases because you can't just throw the database away and rebuild it. You kind of need to keep the data. But there's better and better tooling to make it more feasible to actually validate that your updates to databases aren't going to break anything. And so we got into a conversation around, you could write this code yourself to test your database, but there's, again, you want a framework to make it simpler, and that framework's called T-SQL-T, although there are some others. We also talked about dbFit as basically a mechanism for getting into that process of, okay, this next version of this app needs these changes to the database. These are validated at deployment as part of the pipeline so that the whole thing can get fixed together and treats the database changes the same way it treats a version of the application. So great conversation, and great to sort of press against DBAs that are more on the administrative side to say there are ways to build your databases the same way that developers are building the app.
Well, there you go. Now, one thing we always miss, we miss your genial presence, your knowledge, of course, of enterprise and
but really, .NET. It's the alcohol.
It's the alcohol. Really, it's all about the booze. Let's face it. Yep.
So one of my friends, Glenn, who is from Norway, dropped this on me last week.
Ooh,
Halvedsen. And it's funny. We talk about Vikings all the time, right? When you think about Norway, you think about Vikings, right? And in all these conversations about Scottish whiskey, we have the Treaty of Perth and how the Hebrides were controlled by the Vikings, like all that sort of thing. You kind of think, why don't those guys make whiskey? Because they really don't. It's very rare to run across. In fact, there's only a handful of whiskey distilleries in Norway. Norway is on the west side, northwest corner of Europe. It's the as it was described to me, the rock in Norway is the stuff the ice couldn't crush. It was fully covered during the Ice Age, which is a plus and a minus. It means their mountains are very pointy. They're thoroughly scoured, but also that all that pulverizing of the rock turned into great silts. So their valleys are full of excellent soils. And so as the ice retreated at the end of the Ice Age and humans sort of populated the area, by the time wheat makes it up there, somewhere around 8,000 BC or so, it grows incredibly well. And by the Neolithic era, when agriculture really starts, it's barley. Barley is dominant. Again, why aren't they got good water? They got great conditions. They even have oak trees. Why aren't these folks making whiskey? Why aren't they as keen as the Scots were? Now, it's not like there hasn't been alcohol in Norway. Going all the way back to Tacitus, the Roman historian, who was a questionable quality in his writings, is talking about in 1000 AD how much feasting is an important part of the Germanians, of the Scandinavian people at that time, that they don't make decisions without having a big feast, and they drink copiously while they do that. Now, one of the big parts of that is that written language wasn't a big part of early Norwegian culture. And so you had feasts so that everybody was there because you needed witnesses for any agreements, because you don't have a written form of any of that. But when you really get into distillation, which, remember when we talked on the Irish, that the first stills sort of show up in the 15th century, well, they arrive in Norway then too. And that's when Norway gets its definitive alcohol, initially made with grains. We know it today as aquavit. And so this is a multi-distilled grain-based product, although they switched potato when the potato shows up, which won't be for a while yet, but flavored with caraway. Because if you flavored it with juniper, it'd be gin or genever, depending on your Dutch or your English. And of course, by the 1750s, when the potatoes come from the New World, because it grows, it can make more alcohol per acre, they use potato for that. There are some versions of akvavit that are aged in oak barrels. There is a species of oak up there, the Querulus robust, which is a very sturdy oak. It's great for making ships when you want to go raiding around the world. Then they did make barrels from it as well. But when the wave of aquavit mass production really comes on because of the potato, you start to see the first laws passed in Norway to manage the production of alcohol. So 1757, there's already laws in place limiting who can make the alcohol, who can sell it, importations are controlled. And that has a lash back in the early 1800s where they lift a lot of restrictions because the landowners, who are now growing even more grain, want a right to distill for no other reason than they have excess grain. They don't want it to spoil. So making it into alcohol is a way to preserve that. And if you're producing it, you can sell it. And if 20, 30 years on from that, there's alcohol everywhere. There's explosions with small stills. Alcoholism really starts to get heavy. And this is when you're starting to get the proper state involved. And so it's actually the local municipalities that take control of liquor production. They take control of all of the sales, initially of liquor, but ultimately by the 1870s with wine and beer as well. And so that by the end of the 19th century, in 1894 and so forth, those same communities that are controlling it start to put in prohibition, restricting the sale of alcohol in general, region by region. And by 1917, when we get World War I, where there's restrictions on supply and so forth, you get the first prohibition of alcohol in Norway entirely, which goes into the 1920s, actually somewhat ahead of what happened with the US. But coming out of Norwegian prohibition, the federal government, the state, instead of the municipality, started controlling all liquor, both production and sales, which is basically true ever since. So Norwegian liquor laws are very strict. They consider anything under 0.7% alcohol to be non-alcohol. Like 0.7 to 2.5 is what's called a low alcohol beverage, and those are more freely sold. You have 2.5 to 4.7% are most of your beers and things like that are considered category 1. 4.7 to 22. This is generally a category that would be like wine. That is, though both of those could be sold by people 18 or older and are readily available in most places. 22% and above are considered spirit, only up to 60%. And anything over 60% is illegal in Norway to this day. So certain cask strengths like Abelur's Abunda, they actually have to sort the bottles because some of those come over 60 and they're not allowed to be sold in Norway. And plus, you have to be 20 or older to sell spirits. Huh. So, and this, of course, only applies to intoxicants, industrial alcohols and things like that, not particularly a concern. But I would argue the biggest reason that Norway has always struggled with alcohol here is that they don't have a small producer model. Like in the 2010s, largely through the EU, and we've talked about this before, and it certainly applies in Denmark, they started making tax breaks for small producers so that you had a bunch of littler companies starting to make different kinds of alcohol. They have done that for breweries, but they have not done it for liquor. And so they're kind of missing the market on all that as well. But it does mean that the handful of distilleries that make whiskey in Norway, and there's literally only 5, are all big producers of other things, typically aquavit. So the coolest distillery in Norway is not one I really want to talk about today, and that's the Aurora Spirit Distillery, which is actually above the Arctic Circle. That's kind of their claim to fame.
Wow.
They use an old World War II German military fort as their distillery space, and like we'll get into them sometime later. The one I've got here, because Glenn gave it to me, is the Halvidsen. So this is only about a half hour out of Oslo in Drammersfjord, is where it's on a farm. And Stale Halvorsen Johnson started it in 2007. Although he wasn't making whiskey, he was making what they call herb spirits. And that is akvavit and gin and the like. And in fact, his first production batches by 2009 start winning awards almost right away. And the distinction between gin and aquavit, again, being the caraway flavor versus the juniper flavor. But really, in contemporary gin production today, it's about the local herb, so it makes it distinct. And that was under a brand they called Kimmerud, which is named for the farm that the distillery was started on. And not that I'm a big gin fan, but they do make a version called Navy Strength, which is 57% alcohol.
Woohoo!
Drink carefully, boys. Like
Navy
that
Strength.
is very dangerous. Like, my goodness. Essentially an ounce and a half, right? Oh, by the way, you can't order a double in Norway. It's against the law.
They really don't like drinking, and yet
they are very concerned about the social impacts. And I think it has in general, the Scandinavians deal with this pretty seriously. And part of it is that in the wintertime when it's dark all the time,
there's nothing else to do.
Yeah. And it can get very dark, right? And both emotionally as well as environmentally. And so the liquor controls are pretty strict. That being said, I routinely order 2 singles, pour them together and give them back one in the glass. That's fine.
Oh, that's hysterical.
Just follow the rules.
Yeah.
So, the Hallucinations only started making whiskeys in 2023. So they don't have long duration batches. This particular one is called the Sledgehammer 2024. And so this is a 3-year-old.
No wonder they're worried about doubles.
Sledgehammer. So initially aged in virgin American oak, and then they do a finishing of less than a year in Woodford casks. In fact, they even identify the specific cask. This is cask strength. And that is to say it's at 46.3%. And they only make 900 bottles of it. So this is bottle 803. And it's only a 500 milliliter bottle. So they only made 450 liters of this spirit.
Wow.
They're all sold out now. It sells for 800 Norwegian kroners, which is about $72 US.
Okay.
I don't have much to say about Halvorsson's distillery because they don't have any of the specs published. I found one photo of Stale, who's the lead of the place, in front of a column still. Now, since they make gin and aquavit, of course it's a column still. They probably have a rectifier or a finishing still as well, but have no specs on that at all. All right, smells, it's 46%, right? So it's going to be pretty alcohol-y, and it is, but not burning, which is nice. Like my nose hairs have not curled up. Oh, okay. So, wow, that's a lot smoother than you would expect for only a 3-year-old. Like, they've done a good job. Lots of heat at the end, though. Hello. I can feel it going down and heating up. So gentle on the mouth, little fruit notes. Maybe a bit of that kind of leathery feel. First sips are always an illusion. You got to hit it again, right?
Paul and I are going, wow.
Okay, yeah. It's got a kind of roughness to it. Like I can almost say it's like the west coast of Norway, like British Columbia, rocks and ice and trees and deep water. Like it's pokey and lots of heat. But boy, that's special.
It's like a glacial moraine sliding down your throat.
The first hit is like being hit by a sledgehammer. The second one, you don't care anymore.
Moraine. Yeah,
you're good. I'm vaguely stunned. This is fun. This I'm not going to hunt this down, and it's good because there's not very many of them, right? Like you don't want to go crazy for that. But they're making an interesting whiskey. And that's it's nice to see the Norwegians starting to do this. I don't think it's easy to make whiskey for them there right now, especially imagine only making 900 bottles of this. Like that's all there is.
Yeah. Wow.
Right? They do an edition.
They do have another single malt, the Steiger, right?
Yeah. So and Steiger means
it's the
foreman.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's
Ottar.
It was Stale's great grandfather worked in the coal mines of in Svalbard, which is the only coal mine in Norway. It's now closed, and it's
where the seed vaults are.
It's called the Steiger.
Wow.
Yeah.
Neat. So we don't know what this tastes like because it's not the same.
No. The Sledgehammer 24 is a special edition, again finished in Woodford barrels.
Yeah.
So
that would change it considerably.
Yeah, it is. Like I said, the oak tree, the robust oak tree is different from the other oak trees. It's the stuff you make masts and ships and stuff out of. It grows very large, very straight. It's good wood.
Masts. and drinks.
Yeah, and ships. Right? So I don't know that the barreling is particularly that.
I bet their gin is good. I would try.
Well, and
their
they're,
gin.
I mean, making aquavit for 100 years, right? So,
Right. Yeah, maybe
and gin
aquavit.
is basically just a different set of herbs. So,
Aquavit is a little close to lighter fluid for me.
yeah.
Really, it's just caraway instead of juniper. That's the
main distinction.
whole
right?
difference? Okay.
You distill up till you get to 80-90% range. Then you soak it in botanicals. Then you cut it with water to 40%. That's booze. Like if you don't put the botanicals in it, you just made vodka,
right.
right? If
They
you
sell
put the
that
botanicals
too.
in it, depending on which ones, you've made Genever, gin, or aquavit.
That's interesting.
It's done more magic than that. And the advantage of that is you can sell it the day you made it, right?
Right.
There's no 3 years
no
of aging and all that expensive stuff.
Right.
Make it, ship it. Anyway,
Very
it's fun
awesome.
to be home. I have a couple more stories from this trip that I will save for later weeks.
I would love to hear him.
Oh, I got a Taiwanese whiskey. So,
Oh, wow.
well, yeah, we'll have some fun.
I think you're baking that up.
Yeah, I wish I was. And it's not, I would have trying to find something in Tunisia, but it's Islamic. They had a little bit of alcohol only in the hotel and generally frowned on to be drinking it. So I would tend to go down to the bar in the evening and have a couple of shivises and call it a day. That's the
Mr.
nature of
Richard
Islam.
Campbell, that's kind of his motto. I had a couple of shivases and called it a day.
A day. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Many days ended like that. But I'm going to be drinking the Hallucinations for a little while
Nice.
now.
.NET Rocks is his website, .NETRocks.com, where you'll find that. And of course, runnersradio.com. A pleasure. Welcome home. Glad you're feeling better.
Yeah, much.
We missed you, as you can tell, because this is a 3.5-hour show.
I
catching
did
up.
offer to talk to Paul yesterday. We just couldn't get it to work because
That's okay.
I know. I literally saw your message after we arrived home, and I was like, I guess.
You know it's going to be a 3-hour call, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
this one.
yeah. Yep. We'll do it. We should talk soon.
Yes.
Yes. Paul Thurrott is at thurrott.com, THURROGood.com. That's where his blog is. And you should become a premium member because that's where the really good stuff is.
That's the only way I'm going to afford to get a haircut.
That's how he gets a haircut and those delicious pods. What's the name?
Oh, by
of
the way,
pod,
it was
you know?
the name is Napoli. It's not Milan.
Napoli.
I always screwed it. It's the red. It's a red box, and it's the only one. It's always comical when we buy 30 whatever number of them.
In
then they're always like,
Napoli.
if you buy 40, we can give you a free cup. We're like, yeah, no, we'll get 40.
want a
We're always, we have all this Nespresso merchandise in our apartment now. But anyway,
I want 26 boxes of Napoli. Stat.
and I'll take the free cup.
Nice. Hey, I left one more link under the brown liquor there. It should be in the show notes for the people who look. I did do a future of energy talk about Norway.
Yeah, I saw that YouTube. What is so?
Yeah.
This is
one of the talks that I do, and the future of energy is talking about energy improvement in general. But I tuned into the country. So this June, when I was in the Oslo show, I talked about Norway's power generation and how it's evolving.
very cool.
Yeah, and it was fun.
Is it geothermal? I would expect, or no?
No, they're almost entirely hydroelectric.
Hydro.
Yeah, they got mountains and they got water.
Right.
So why would
Iceland
they
is geothermal.
they're
of course.
geothermal because they have volcanoes.
Volcanoes.
They're
Very nice. So you could watch this. It's a NDC Conferences channel on YouTube. Search for Richard Campbell, The Future of Energy. I will be watching that tonight instead of The Desperate Housewives of Oslo.
Yep. Those are the two obvious choices.
Yeah, right.
It's like Desperate Housewives.
Paul's books are at Lean.
You know, I did that dedicated nuclear power one.
Yeah, I want to see that too. Is that up anywhere?
It's up there, but I can't. Now that all the tech companies want to buy nuclear power, I cannot tell you how many conferences have called me. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
It's a hot topic. Yeah, you're a hot topic. Yeah.
Well, and doing it in Poland when I was talking about the Chernobyl disaster, and I met a bunch of people who, as kids, were taking iodine drinks.
Yeah, they're probably not real thrilled about the.
I just eat
return.
Cheetos. It's the same thing.
Almost the same. Thing, yeah.
But just quick summary: modern nuclear power is a very different thing.
Well, nuclear power has always been incredibly safe. Coal's killed way more people.
Yeah,
With
but
pollution. The new
this is
nuclear
like
power really.
Christopher Reeve
does
Superman. He's like, just to be clear, flight is still the safest form of travel.
good. I'll watch this. That'll be very interesting and enlightening, I might add. Paul Thurrott's books are at leanpub.com, including Windows Everywhere, and of course the must-have field guide to Windows 11. Now that I'm 24H2, I have to check the new 24H2 chapters.
Oh, there's been a lot of updates.
A lot of updates.
So your cheese will definitely be moved.
There's been a lot of moving of cheese.
You've moved my cheese again. We do Windows Weekly. Normally, it's only a couple of hours, but every once in a while, we get a little excited about the topic. And
I could
we
tell
go
this
a little
one was going to
longer.
be big. Xbox, Ignite, a lot of stuff.
yeah, there was a lot of stuff. It's good. Nobody's complaining that the shows are too long. You just, as long as it's
My
long
wife
enough.
would like to eat dinner, but other than that,
Dinner, schminner. We do the show normally 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. That would be 1900 UTC. As I mentioned, streamed live on 8 different platforms, including YouTube, Twitch, Kick, Facebook, LinkedIn, X.com, and TikTok. And of course, our Club Twit members can also watch inside the Discord. After the fact, on-demand versions of the show are available at our website, twit.tv/WW. If you go there, you'll see a link also to the YouTube channel, a great way to share the show or little clips from the show with people who are not familiar with it. And we appreciate it when you do that because that helps us spread the word about the goodness that is Windows Weekly. Best way to listen, though, probably would be by subscribing your favorite podcast client. Merely go to any podcast app of your choice and click subscribe. It's free, and you will get the show the minute we're done with it, which is exactly what you want. And, of course, we thank our Club Twit members for the contribution that they make. Just remember, great podcasts thrive thanks to the communities they build and value. I know I host a few.
nice.
Thank you, Joe, for Esposito.
I don't always drink Twit beer or beer, but when I do.
But when I do, that's good. That's good stuff. Joe's a madman. Thank you, Joe, for that. Join the club, twit.tv/clubtwit. Tonight, Micah's Crafting Corner. Bring your, he's going to be doing
a quilt. What's he doing?
He does actually really great crewel work, but there are people there doing Lego. There are people doing any kind of craft at all. It doesn't matter. It's just a chance to hang and talk and have some fun. It's a community, and that's what we love about it. So that's just one of many events at twit.tv/clubtwit. Thanks to Richard Campbell. Thanks to Paul Thurrott. You guys rock. I will see, as does .net. I will see you next week on Windows Weekly. Bye-bye.